Welcome, everyone. I'm Kimberly Boschman, and this is the Intentionally Intuitive Podcast. In this episode, we are going to take a look at life path number 4, as well as master number 22-4, and the possible influences of each zodiac sign. So I recommend listening to your sun, moon, and rising signs to gain greater understanding and sort of a bigger perspective of what you could be working with, what you signed up for in this lifetime. I will provide the timestamps down below, as well as calculations for each life path number. So if you're not familiar with what yours is, you can do the calculations for that. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get into it. Aries, if you are a sun, moon, or rising sign of Aries, and you are also a life path number 4 or 22-4, then this reading is for you. 22s, I am going to pretty much refer to you as 4s because that is your life path number. 22 is the extension of that energy. If there's something that you need to know that pertains specifically to the 22 energy, then I will let you know. So let's go ahead and take a look at the higher and the lower expressions of Aries, as well as the higher and lower expressions of the 4, so that you can kind of see how those energies work together, how they complement one another, and how they can work against each other. So Aries is, of course, a fire sign. When Aries is in its highest expression, we see, passion, motivation, confidence with relentless determination. There's quite literally this fire lit beneath them. Aries can be very direct in their approach as well. It's like if they see something, they're going for it, and it takes a lot to sort of stop them. When Aries is in its lower expression, we see, lack of patience, mood alterations, quick to anger, impulsivity, aggressiveness, and a sense of martyrdom. So let's take a look at the 4 energy and see how they sort of complement each other, how they work together, how they, like I said, can kind of work against each other, and where you'll face some of your challenges. So 4 and, of course, 22 are more introverted in nature. Now, I say definitely 4 is more introverted in nature. 22s, you still have that sort of introverted energy, but your work is meant to be extroverted because 22 is meant to be, the master builder, to build something within the world that makes a difference, that, helps the greater good. So obviously it needs to be out there in the public eye. That doesn't mean that you as the person need to be out there in the public eye, but your work will eventually need to be as you step into your 22 energy. But the energy of the 4 is more introverted. It is quite literally, when we talk about like the astrological connection, a lot of the other signs are like, Gemini or Aquarius or Aries, their connection to the astrology. For the 4, it's funny because it is quite literally the earth, okay? So when we look at the astrological connection, it's the earth. That is 4 energy. So when we look at the element, obviously it is the earth. It's an earth element. So you could feel very much connected to Gaia, to the planet, to the animals, to all that inhabit the earth. You could feel a very deep connection. You could also feel like a lot of your energy, when you're in your highest expression, comes from the heart center, that 4th chakra. So as we look at the higher elevations of the 4, or the positive traits of the 4, we see this sort of practicality, more of kind of like a scientific mind sometimes, good organization, good eye for detail, good memory. 4s like to put down roots. They like to create things that are stable and secure, that are like a strong foundation, that are kind of like building a legacy, right? 4s like or tend to like a sense of order. When things are chaotic, that can cause a lot of anxiety for a 4. So they like that sense of order. 4s, when they're in their higher expression, are very patient. And so when you're in your lower expression of 4, I just have to mention this because I'm sure 4s understand this. I myself am also a 4. But it's like one of our biggest lessons in life is about patience and being, just conquering that impatience. So patience is definitely something that when we're in our higher octave, we exude that. We're very patient individuals. 4s Fours can be emotionally mature, very logical, very intuitive and psychic, which is interesting because you probably wouldn't necessarily think that about a four, but you have the internal aspects of the four, which is very feminine, and then you have the external aspects of the four, which is, again, very practical, the builder, the logical, so very masculine. So it's this really beautiful balance when we are in our positive traits. And four, again, is very heart-centered. It's that fourth chakra. So, and there's also this wisdom that comes from four. I want to mention that as well. So you can kind of see how it's like, how it sort of emulates the earth, right? Like what we think of when we think of Gaia, when we think of nature. It's like, very tangible, very practical, very grounded energy. When four steps into its sort of negative traits, we can see this sense of shyness, overly methodical in their actions. So some things that should be happening very quickly become overly methodical. Now, fours are meant to do things in a methodical way, but when we're in our shadow, we just become sort of obsessive about the steps, right? Like it's hard to move on to the next step because we're too sort of ingrained in the step that we're currently in and become that sort of perfectionist. And so that's sort of a lower trait. A lot of stubbornness and self-doubt can creep in for fours and 22s. Fixed opinions, very rigid in their thinking, overly serious, very materialistic, and again, impatient. So when we look at Aries, we can see, being a fire sign, that the earth element and the fire element actually work really well together when the fire element is sort of contained, not really like, you don't want to extinguish it, but when it's contained and not like running rampant. So Aries will give that four the passion, the motivation, the confidence, right? Because a lot of times fours, when we're in our shadows, we can have a lot of self-doubt. And so that Aries energy, if you signed up as a sun, moon, rising Aries, you sort of have this innate confidence within you, right? And so that actually fuels the four to sort of put themselves out there, to have that confidence, to be able to believe in themselves enough to build whatever it is their vision is, right? So it's actually really very complementary energy. We see that motivation come through. Again, fours can be sort of impatient, and when things don't happen on their timeline, they can sort of give up. And really, four energy, again, when it's in its highest expression, is meant to push you to sort of, to meet your highest expression, to keep going, to be persistent. It's very easy sometimes for a four to be like, well, this isn't working, so I'm going to give up. When really you're meant to have that patience, you're meant to be dedicated, you're meant to continue in the face of adversity, so that whatever you're building, you have tested to see, will it last the test of time, right? To build that legacy. So again, Aries energy, that fire energy, assists the four in the determination, the passion, the motivation, the confidence, right? Very, very beautiful complementary energy. Now, when we get into the more negative traits or the lower expressions of Aries and the four, we can see where things can kind of get a little out of hand. So Aries, when it's in its lower expression, lacks patience. Four, when it's in its lower expression, lacks patience. So now we have this compounded energy of just this impatient individual who, has mood alterations and quick to anger and impulsivity and aggressiveness and martyrdom from Aries, and then the materialistic, fixed opinions, stubbornness, self-doubt, all of that, and the impatience from the four. And it just becomes sort of like this inner tornado that becomes really difficult to work with, right? And it can obviously slow you down. Whereas like you start to fall into that victim mentality of, why isn't anything working for me? Why does everything take so long? I can almost guarantee that if you have four energy strongly throughout your numerology report, things do not just fall into your lap easily. You have to work for them. You have to go through each step. Things take time. It's kind of like four energy can really be equated to like turtle energy, right? It's like slow and steady wins the race, right? The slow progress leads to the things that will stand the test of time. So things are not necessarily meant to happen quickly. And when you have that Aries energy that is a fire energy, you automatically want things to happen more quickly. So again, that impatience is what can sort of trip a 4 up. And it's just something we have to learn to deal with, to understand that things happen on not necessarily on our timeline, but that we're meant to be a contributor and a participant in that process. So I think that that's probably where you will see some of your challenges the most. I mean, that is where you'll see your challenges. When you fall into your lower expression of Aries, when you fall into your lower expression of your 4, you're going to see challenges that kind of either escalate whatever it is that you're sort of hyper-focused on. Like if you're impatient, then you're going to meet challenges where you're just going to have to wait even longer, right? Like it's just, so through those challenges, we learn what it is that we need to incorporate so that we can overcome those challenges, right? And so yeah, I think that, there's nothing wrong with the lower expressions. I say that in every reading. There's nothing wrong with the lower expressions. They're part of who we are. And it's through those lower expressions that we learn what we need to learn on this journey. So they're not bad, but you can kind of recognize, when you fall into them and when you need to do some work to elevate yourself out of them. Because as a 4 with Aries, you're going to feel your best when you're passionate, motivated, confident, but also have that level of patience that you understand that it's a collaborative effort between you, other people, a higher power, and it'll all happen the way it's meant to happen. So again, following that heart center, believing that things will work out the way that they are meant to, using that, innate wisdom, the logic, all that stuff coming together. You will feel your best when you're in your higher expression. When you're in that lower expression, you're going to feel like things aren't moving, that you're stuck in mud, that, things are happening to you, and you can get really I'm upset about it, right? Like angry, impulsive, all those things, and those aren't going to help you. So again, it's through those challenges that you'll recognize what you need to do, what shifts you need to make, what altercations, so that you can move beyond that and up to your higher expression. So I hope that this was helpful in kind of showing you those higher expressions of both the Aries and the 4, as well as the lower, so that you can see what you're working with, because it's all workable energy. It's all things that you can work with. Sometimes, though, it's easy to get stuck in those lower expressions, and we just need to find our way out of them. And you'll know when you're finding your way out of them because you'll start to feel better. You'll start to feel more aligned, right? So I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for listening. Take care. Taurus, if you are a sun, moon, or rising sign Taurus, as well as a life path number 4 or 22-4, then this reading is for you. 22s, I will refer to you as 4 throughout the reading because that is your life path number. The 22 energy is an extension of that. If there's something you need to know that pertains directly to the 22, then I will let you know. So I want to take a look at the higher and lower expressions of both Taurus and the 4 energy. This will give you a better understanding of sort of what you're working with, how the energies complement each other, how they potentially work against each other, so what challenges you may face. So Taurus energy is an earth energy, okay? When Taurus is in its highest expression, we see a strong desire for social and corporate stability. Taurus has sort of this extravagance about them and this sort of desire for the finer things in life. When you're a Taurus, and you're in your higher expression, you like to be content. You like security. You like dependability. And you're sort of very dedicated in the things that you show up to in life and love. So it's a very earthy, grounded, stable energy. When Taurus is in its lower expression, we see stubbornness, not willing to take risks or leave sort of their comfort zone. They can be very predictable and rigid in their beliefs and their actions. So they sort of become very set in their ways and can also be perfectionists. Now, when we look at the 4 energy, what's really interesting about this is, so 4 energy is more introverted in its nature. I say 4 energy is more introverted, but if you're a 22, understand that your work is meant to be more extroverted. How you show up in the world, what you contribute to the world is obviously meant to be more extroverted because you are the master builder. So just keep that in mind, although you will sort of feel that 4 sort of introverted nature. So that's what can make it a little bit difficult for 22s, is that they're sort of meant to be out in the public. So 4 energy is, when we look at the astrological connection, it is quite literally the earth. It is represented by the earth. And so it is, of course, an earth element. So already you can kind of see how the Taurus energy, which is an earth energy, and the 4 energy will just be like, siblings, right? Like sisterhood, like just very complementary of each other when they're in their highest expression. We'll talk about how that can be a little bit challenging when you're in your lower expression. Now, the positive traits of the 4 are that they are, and you're going to hear some similarities here between 4 and Taurus energy. The 4 is very practical, very scientific, very, a good organizer. They have a good eye for detail, good memory. If you know any 4s, more than likely, they probably can remember things from when they were like 2 years old. They have the memory of an elephant, I guess, right? 4s like to put down roots. They like to build foundations, and they like to build foundations that are going to last. They have a sense of order about them, or at least they like things to be a particular way or in order, or they like to plan, whatever the case may be. It's just part of their nature. 4s can be when they're in their higher expression, they can be very patient individuals. They've got, they can take as long as it needs to take to get there, but they're going to get there, right? They'll just take their time. It's kind of like turtle energy. They are emotionally mature often when they are in their higher expression. They can be very logical. However, it's a very beautiful balance between the logical mind and the intuitive psychic nature that's sort of a part of them. They are this very beautiful balance between the divine feminine energy and the divine masculine energy when they are in their highest expression. 4 energy is very heart-centered. You can think about the heart chakra, which is the 4th chakra. So if you are a 4, you probably feel very connected to the earth. You probably feel very connected to nature, to the animals, to those that inhabit the earth with us. So that's the higher expression of 4. When we look at the lower expressions of 4, we see this tendency to be sort of shy and withdrawn. Remember, 4 is sort of an introverted energy. They can be overly methodical, so they can get really stuck on a step. Now, 4s are meant to take each step slowly. They're meant to sort of integrate each step and make sure that it works because they're building a legacy. But if you're in your lower expression, you can get stuck on those steps because of perfectionism or whatever. And so that can be sort of a negative trait. It can trip you up. It can hold you back. They can be stubborn in their views or how they approach life. They can have a lot of self-doubt, especially if you're a 22. Self-doubt can be crippling at times because, again, you've got sort of this more introverted energy, but you're meant to be out in the world. You're meant to be sharing your gifts with the world. And that's a big ask, especially if you've got that master level 22 energy. So you can have a lot of self-doubt that can creep in. 4s can often have a lot of fixed opinions, be very rigid in their beliefs when they are in their negative traits. They can be overly serious, overly materialistic, and impatient. Now, let's look at the higher expressions of both Taurus and the 4 and see how they complement each other. So Taurus has this very strong desire for social and corporate stability. Well, that helps the 4 because the 4 is trying to build a legacy. The 4 is trying to, put down roots, create order, and use the science as well as the intuition and create something that is going to be practical, but also sort of a bridge between a higher consciousness and the earth plane. And so that desire for the social and corporate stability sort of pushes the 4 to be out there, right? And to create something that will, again, stand the test of time. So it really assists. It's almost like that Taurus energy is that extra push that the 4 needs to continue to be patient, to continue to take it step by step, to be methodical. If you're a 4, more than likely, things do not just fall into your lap. You have to work for them, right? You have to put in the effort, but that effort is rewarded in direct correlation to the effort that you put in, right? So it's like the rewards are in direct proportion to the effort put forth. And so again, it's like that Taurus energy is like pushing you to keep going, to, be, be resilient and not give up in the face of adversity, that sort of thing. And so it really is helpful in that way. And also Taurus likes that extravagance, right? And that the finer things in life. So again, it kind of gives you that push to keep on going, keep working towards whatever it is that you want. And with 4 energy, because it's so practical, it's so physical, it's so earth oriented, it's going to not only want to build something that is, brings them the finer things in life, but also that is assisting the earth in some way, that is assisting the collective in some way, the sort of collective consciousness as which the earth is a part of, right? So you can see how it kind of all ties together. I see Taurus is like that pushing energy, like pushing the 4 to keep going, to keep striving. And then we have, now I will say one thing that Taurus higher expression that can kind of impede the 4 energy with the extravagance piece is because when a 4 falls into their lower expression, they become very materialistic, right? They're so like physical in nature, like they, the material plane is their playground. And so if they're striving for the finer things in life and the extravagance, it's a very fine line before the 4 falls into sort of that materialistic kind of energy and just doing the work for what they will acquire. So you just have to kind of be careful that you're not letting that striving energy of like wanting the finer things in life, which there is nothing wrong with that, fall into sort of a more materialistic energy where what you're doing is just for the validation, just for the material goods. You see what I'm saying? So there's just a fine line there that I think if you're Taurus and 4, you have to just be aware of and just work with that energy. And also Taurus energy is just so dependable and dedicated, right? So that's just so in line with that 4 energy. And again, it just magnifies that for the 4 so that you become even more dependable, more dedicated so that they can continue to do their life's work. Now, where we fall into some shady territory is when we get into the lower expressions of both the Taurus and the 4. Now, if you are in the lower expression of Taurus, you're stubborn. You're not willing to take risks or leave your comfort zone. You become very predictable and rigid, and you become sort of set in your ways, right? And you're a perfectionist. We already talked about how the 4 can also have very fixed opinions, be very, rigid in their thinking, too serious, very methodical, and sort of that perfectionist energy. And so really when you have Taurus and the 4 come together in their lower expressions, it's just a complete halt of energy. There's no movement. You become really stuck. You don't want to step beyond your comfort zone. You become too rigid in your thinking. You don't have an open mind. And if you're going to build something that's going to last the test of time, it needs to be sort of something that's more expansive, something that's like opens the minds of others, right? As well as yourself. And so it's really, it's really difficult to do that if you're confined. And so you can just see how it's like those lower expressions just completely bring you to a halt. So if you're currently in a situation where it's like, because it's a fine line, because 4 energy is slow in its progress. Again, it's not meant to see quick results, because quick results are often difficult to sustain. They're difficult to maintain, right? And yeah, so we are meant, I'm also a 4, we are meant to, slow our roll and go with the process, right? Be patient, because every ounce of effort that we put forth will return, some level of investment that is, that is in line with the effort that we put forth. It's just we have to have that patience. Now, if we're in our lower expressions of Taurus and our 4, it's just everything's halting, right? It's like it's going to be even more slow going, and it just becomes like very, very uncomfortable. And so when it becomes really, really uncomfortable for you, there's often something to learn there. There's going to be some kind of challenge that surfaces for you. You're meant to learn something from that experience. There is nothing wrong with the lower expressions of either Taurus or the 4. that's the arena where we learn our greatest lessons, where we learn the most about ourselves. Our soul came here to experience the higher and the lower expressions, to see what works, to see what doesn't work, to see what the extremes are, to see where our balance lies. And so, so I feel like for Taurus and for where you're going to feel most uncomfortable is just that, if you thought things were slow before, if you're in those lower expressions, things are just going to come to a screeching halt, and it's just going to be incredibly uncomfortable because your desires are very similar, right? You want to build something. You want that stability and that security. You want that, those accolades, that accomplishment. But if you're in that lower expression, you're just not going to get there. It's going to take a long time until you kind of see where you need to make some adjustments. So I hope that this was helpful. Thank you all so much for listening. Take care. Gemini, if you are a Gemini sun, moon, or rising, and you are also a life path 4 or 22-4, then this reading is for you. 22s, I will be referring to you as 4s unless there's something specific that you need to know as a 22, because remember, 22s, your life path number is actually 4. 22 is just an extension of that energy. Okay, so let's look at the higher and the lower expressions of Gemini, as well as the higher and lower expressions of the 4, so that you can see how these energies complement each other, as well as how they kind of work against each other, so that you can see where your challenges might surface. So Gemini is an air sign. When Gemini is in its higher expression, we see this energy that's very adaptable, very easygoing, right? Intelligent, outgoing, and social, very perceptive of its surroundings, and and the people that it runs into. Very analytical, very inquisitive, highly passionate about, again, what it invests its energy into. The lower expressions of Gemini, we start to see indecisiveness, impulsivity, unreliability, difficulty in planning things, and a tendency to be sort of inconsistent in many areas of life. When we look at the higher expressions of the 4, we can see how these energies really complement each other, the higher expression of Gemini and the higher expression of the 4. So let's take a closer look at 4s. So 4s and 22s, we have this sort of more introverted energy. Now, I will say the 4 is more of an introverted energy. The 22 has that 4 introverted energy, but the work of the 22 is meant to be extroverted. It's meant to be out in the world. It's meant to, it's that master builder. It's going to build something that will help the community, society at large, whatever. So if you're a 22, you may find that your work, your purpose takes you more into an uncomfortable field of being extroverted, okay? Or at least your work. Doesn't mean that you have to be, but your work should be or will be. 4 energy is what we would consider earth energy, and the reason for that is because when we look at the astrological connection between 4 and astrology, 4 is represented quite literally by the earth. That is the planet that is represented by the 4. So if you are a 4 or 22-4, you probably feel a very strong connection to nature, to the earth. You probably feel really replenished when you're in nature, when you are around maybe animals, whatever the case may be. You probably have a very unique connection to the earth, to animals, to those that we inhabit the planet with. And again, it's because your energy is so tied directly to the planet. So it's really beautiful energy. Some of the positive traits of the 4, we see this sort of more practical energy. They are part of the physical plane, right? This is their playground. They can have a very scientific mind. They can be good organizers, good eyes for detail, have a great memory. If you know a 4, they probably have phenomenal memory where they can remember things back to, when they were 2. 4s like to put down roots. They like to feel stable and secure, and they like to work towards feeling stable and secure. And they like to feel like they've contributed to that stability, right? They usually have some sort of sense of order. They're usually probably good planners, organizers, whatnot. They tend to be very patient. When they're in their highest expression, that's key. They are very patient individuals. They can usually, work a room really well because of that patience. They're generally very emotionally mature, and you often find a lot of wisdom with 4 energy. They can be very logical, that sort of more divine masculine energy, but then you also see this very intuitive psychic energy around a 4, which is more feminine, divine feminine. They are when they are in their higher expression, they are very heart-centered. They move from the space of their heart, and then they use the logical ego for the logistics, right, to assist them. And so again, it's this beautiful balance of divine masculine, divine feminine energies when a 4 is in its highest expression. So if we look at those higher expressions of Gemini, we see, again, very adaptable, easygoing, intelligent, outgoing, and social. And so what's interesting here is like you've got this Gemini energy that's very social, very adaptable. 4s can be not so adaptable. 4s need to be adaptable, but they can be, it can take them a little bit of time to adapt. You know what I mean? So the Gemini energy is actually very, it assists the 4 energy in that way. So if you came here with Gemini, Sun, Moon, Rising, it's part of your innate sort of makeup where you are adaptable. You have this sort of sense about being really easygoing and outgoing and social. Whereas if you're a 4, you're more sort of introverted and you're sort of like, more practical and, not that you're not adaptable, but it just takes you a little bit more time to get there. You know what I mean? And so, because you like that sense of order, and then you can't have, adaptability and sort of be organized at the same time. You've got to sort of go with the flow a little bit more. So I feel like that Gemini energy really assists the 4 in being able to go with the flow more. So if you came as a Gemini and a 4, there's a reason for that. Whatever it is that is part of your purpose, whatever it is that you were meant to step into, you need to have that adaptability. You need to have that sort of outgoing and social and really perceptive energy about yourself, as well as the practicality of the 4 and that sense of, building some kind of foundation that'll stand the test of time and being patient. So they really start to complement each other, where they assist each other. The energies assist one another. Also, with Gemini, there's just this sort of analytical and inquisitive nature about them, and which is great for the 4 because, again, it assists you in determining what it is you want to build and how does that look like. What are your options? What are the, who can you work with to assist you? It's just very, very complementary. We can see how they really work together. And then also Gemini being very passionate about whatever it throws itself into assists that 4 because, again, 4s have to have patience. So if you can sort of link that passion with that patience, you can keep going. It gives you fuel for the long haul, right? So it's really very complementary energy, very beautiful energy to work with. Now, when we get into the lower expressions, this is where, of course, it's going to trip you up. It's the same with every sign and number. The lower expressions, you will see of Gemini, again, that indecisiveness, the impulsivity, unreliability, difficulty in planning. And now 4s at their highest expression are phenomenal planners. You know what I mean? So it's like you're going to feel this push and this pull against yourself, almost like you're 2 different people. And then lower expression of Gemini also, inconsistency. Again, that is toxic for a 4 who is very, who can be overly consistent, right? So I guess it kind of helps balance it out. But if you are trying to, step into your higher expression of your 4, which is all about, again, that sort of being more organized and bringing balance through stability to the world, right? And then you've got this inconsistency or unreliability or impulsivity of the lower expression of Gemini, you're just going to have a harder time stepping into that higher expression of the 4, which again, you'll face your challenges through that Gemini side to bring you back up to the higher expression of Gemini so that you're working in tandem with that 4 energy, if that makes sense. Now, if you're in your lower expression of 4 and your lower expression of Gemini, you got some work to do, right? So lower expression of 4, we see again, shy, overly methodical, stubborn, a lot of self-doubt, fixed opinions, very materialistic, serious in nature, very impatient. And so you have like this sort of like chaotic energy of the Gemini lower expression again, unreliable, indecisive, inconsistent, difficulty planning. Then you have sort of this impatient energy and overly methodical with a lot of self-doubt energy of the lower 4. And again, it just feels like a lot of churning energy within. And you can see how it would stop you up. It would create a lot of chaos for the 4. And that's something where 4s, if you're in a chaotic environment and you're a 4, you're going to feel completely out of balance. And so again, it's going to be really hard for you to step into that higher expression of Gemini, higher expression of 4, if you're in those lower expressions, because it's literally like this, you almost see like a whirlpool type thing, where it's just sucking you down. So you will face your greatest challenges when you're in your lower expressions of that 4 and Gemini energy, no doubt. But it's not a bad thing, right? It's like that's where you will learn what you need to learn so that in the future, when this comes up for you, when you start to teeter on that line and start falling into those lower expressions, because it happens throughout life, right? We came here to experience it all. But you all, with that Gemini and 4, if you're in your lower expressions, you're going to learn some really solid things about yourself and what works for you and what doesn't work for you, what makes you feel good, what makes you feel really bad and chaotic. And if you start to feel really chaotic and you're a Gemini, you can kind of probably see that you're in your lower expression of Gemini. If you start to become really materialistic, very overly serious about things, very fixed in your opinions, argumentative, just sort of, again, chaotic thinking, you're probably in your lower expression of your 4 and potentially also your lower expression of your Gemini. So again, those lower expressions are just going to make you feel uncomfortable. They're going to make you feel extremely uncomfortable, especially as a 4. So you just have to find the ways to move out of them, to transmute that energy, and to find those tools and that wisdom, which, 4 is a very wise energy, to overcome that and to move beyond it. But it helps to be aware of where that could be coming from. So again, if you're a 4 and you feel good when you are more logical or more stable or more practical, or a planner or whatever the case may be, and then you sort of feel really chaotic and you're also a Gemini, and you're all of a sudden very indecisive or super impulsive or unreliable or whatever those cases may be, the things that are kind of like polar opposite to the 4, then you just know you're probably in the lower expression of Gemini or a lower expression of your 4. So it'll show you, those challenges will show you where it is that you need to do the work to transmute the energy to rise above it, right? And that doesn't mean you're not going to ever fall below it again. You will. It's part of the experience. But hopefully this will assist you to kind of see like what those expressions are and to recognize them when you fall into them so that you can kind of, again, do the work and be aware and figure out what the challenge is trying to show you, learn from it, and move on. So I hope that this was helpful. Thank you so much for listening. Take care, everyone. Cancer, if you are Cancer Sun, Moon, or Rising, and you're also a life path number 4 or a life path 22-4, then this reading is for you. 22s, I am going to refer to you as 4s throughout this reading because ultimately that is your life path number. 22 is an extension of that energy. If there's something specific that the 22 needs to know, then I will share that with you. Okay, so I would like to look at the higher and the lower expressions of Cancer, as well as the higher and lower expressions of the 4, to give you an idea of how those energies sort of work together, how they work against each other, and what you sort of signed up for. So Cancer is a water sign. When Cancer is in its highest expression, we see this energy of being very nurturing, very sensitive, compassionate, security seeking. They like to be at home. They like to be around family and loved ones. They often seek deep, intimate connections. They're very loyal and protective, and also very intuitive and psychic. When we look at the lower expressions of Cancer, we see this sort of more withdrawn energy, overly emotional, very moody, overly sentimental. They can get stuck in the past. They can turn very vindictive, and they're also lacking emotional maturity when they're in that lower expression. So if we look at the four and the higher and lower expressions of the four, you'll see how they kind of play into each other. The four energy is much more introverted in its nature. Okay. Now, if you're a 22, you are also going to have that introverted energy of the four, but you have a more extroverted energy with the 22. So your work is meant to be out into the public, out into the world, making a difference in the world and the greater community. So it's a lot more extroverted. So for you, 22s, you will sort of even feel that push and pull within yourself between the 22 energy and the 4 energy, but they're both a part of you. And so you have to find your balance. With the 4 energy, when we look at the astrological connection, it is quite literally represented by the planet, the Earth. It's very Earth energy. And so for 4s, you probably feel a very strong and deep connection to the Earth. You probably feel very at home in nature with the animals. You probably have a very unique tie to the animals, right? So just you are such a big part of the Earth, of Gaia, of that consciousness that it's probably very close to your heart. And you probably see that throughout your life. Now, the positive traits of the 4, we see this very practical energy, scientific. Well, often they will have a scientific mind, be good organizers, they're great planners. They have great eye for detail, great memory. If you know a 4, they probably can remember things that happened back when they were 2 years old. You know what I mean? They probably have just a phenomenal memory. They usually will like to put down roots. They like that security, that stability, but they like to earn that stability and security. They like to know that they had some kind of contribution to building whatever that is. 4s usually have a sense of innate order. They like things to be in order. Not, if they're in their high expression, it's not overly meticulous. It's just that they like an order to things, right? They like that structure without feeling overly confined. 4s tend to be very patient individuals, especially when they're in their higher expression. Well, definitely when they're in their higher expression. They're people who others tend to open up to or feel comfortable around, being vulnerable around, because again, they're very patient. They are not quick to anger. Typically, they're very emotionally mature. There's also a level of wisdom that comes through the 4 energy. And honestly, it feels almost like it's that wisdom that's pulled from the Earth's consciousness, right? It's just you're such a big part of the Earth's energy. 4s can be very logical, but they are also very, very intuitive and psychic at times. When they're in their higher expression, they function from that heart center. So again, you think about the 4th chakra. The 4th chakra is the heart chakra. So 4 energy will move from that heart center to figure out the next step, but they'll also incorporate that logical mind. So it's actually a really beautiful balance between divine feminine masculine and divine feminine energy and divine masculine energy. It's a very beautiful balance when you're in your higher expression. Now, when you fall into your lower expression of the 4, we see negative traits such as being shy or overly shy, right? To the point where it's crippling. Overly methodical, very stubborn, a lot of self-doubt. Self-doubt is one that can be crippling for 22s as well, especially if you are trying to put your work out into the world and it's something that hasn't been built before or done before. That can be incredibly crippling for a 22, and that's just something that needs to be worked through. Some of the other negative traits of the 4 are very fixed opinions, so very rigid, right, in their thinking, very serious, very argumentative, unimaginative, right? Again, just very rigid, and materialistic and impatient. Impatience is one that a lot of 4s really struggle with throughout their lifetime because things for 4s seem to move so slowly. It's you put in all this effort and it takes forever, it feels like, to see any kind of result. But what's beautiful, it's kind of like Saturnian energy. It's you will receive the rewards in direct proportion to the effort that you put forth, right? Even if it takes time. So it's worth being resilient. It's worth continuing to move forward towards whatever your vision is or your goal. But impatience can be such a plague for the 4 until they figure out that it's a partnership with a higher power, that it's a collaboration and it's not meant to happen necessarily on their timeline. So when we look at Cancer, the higher expression of Cancer, again, that very nurturing, sensitive, compassionate energy, I really am just drawn to, even though Cancer is that water sign, I'm very drawn to the nurturing energy of the earth, the actual planet, right? It's like when you go into nature, you feel like you are being nurtured and healed by Mother Earth. And so that energy, that Cancerian energy, can be very nurturing for the 4, right? It's like if you signed up as a Cancer Sun, Moon, Rising, and also a 4, it's like you are your own best nurturer. You are the one who's going to bring that energy forth to, when you might not be seeing it in the external world, right? Maybe you have maybe you don't have a mother figure in your life or anyone with like real strong feminine energy. And so it's interesting because if you have that Cancerian energy, it's like you have that within you. We all do, but you really do. It's like you have like that nurturing energy to sort of help you to self-soothe and to, again, take a break, to find your stillness. Because again, the 4 is when it's in its highest expression, it's very well balanced between divine masculine, divine feminine energies, but it can feel more heavily masculine. It can feel like it's more in action mode because it's trying to build something that will stand the test of time, that is has a legacy to it. But that patience, right, is where that feminine energy comes in. That intuitive side is where that feminine energy comes in. And so it's like, and again, the earth energy is Mother Gaia, that is feminine energy. So again, I just see that Cancerian energy as really assisting you in finding and utilizing that feminine energy from within, which is very beautiful, beautiful energy. That would be able to think a little bit more difficult if you were working with a more masculine energy or like maybe a fiery energy. But with it being Cancer, it's just such a nurturing energy that it's really assisting the 4 in continuing the momentum. And so it's very, very beautiful. And also, Cancer energy is very loyal and protective and intuitive and psychic. And that's another thing, that 4 energy is very intuitive and psychic as well. A lot of 4s have a hard time stepping into that more intuitive side at first, right? Like eventually throughout life, you sort of tap into that side of yourself and it really assists your progress. So those of you that have Cancer, Sun, Moon, Rising, it's like, again, just kind of like this added benefit. Like you're already stepping into the 4 energy with that more intuitive depth to you, and you're more sensitive to it. You're more sensitive to that psychic side. So it sort of comes a little bit more naturally for you than it would for maybe some of the other signs. So again, you can just kind of see how you're setting yourself up to really feed into those more feminine sides of yourself so that you're much more balanced, which is, again, very beautiful energy. Now, when we look at the lower expressions, this is where it could get a little bit tricky, as with all of the signs and the numbers. But again, Cancer energy is more withdrawn. It's overly emotional, very moody, and can be vindictive, right? And lacking that emotional maturity. And what do we say about the 4 in its highest expression? Is usually emotionally mature. And so with that Cancerian energy, if you're in your lower expression, and then you also fall into your lower expression of your 4, now you allow your emotions to take over completely. You have no control over your emotions. You may become more argumentative, which is a lower expression of the 4, more shy, withdrawn, overly methodical or meticulous, more stubborn, right? And you can see how that's going to affect your relationships, your progress forward, how you probably will not be building something that is going to last the test of time, but rather building something to acquire that instant gratification, right? To appease the emotions, to appease the ego. And so again, you just kind of set yourself up for a situation where it all needs to be dismantled again, to start over, because that's something with 4 energy. I myself am also a 4, so trust me, I get it. But it's like with 4s, if you do anything too quickly, if you do anything like for that instant gratification, it's going to bite you in the butt. It's going to come back and it's going to be like, nope, you missed these steps. You need to go back and do these steps again, and then do it right, and then you can progress forward. it does need to, it's a very methodical energy. However, it's also a fine line where you can't fall to be too methodical because you'll take too much time on it and then you'll trip yourself up. So again, if you have that lower expression of Cancer, which is again, can be vindictive, withdrawn, overly emotional, then you couple that with the negative traits of the 4, which again is like withdrawn, overly methodical, a lot of self-doubt, fixed opinions, materialistic, impatience, right? You can just see how it's like you will end up just walking in circles. Your emotions will get the better of you and you will just be like turning circles. You will not be moving forward and you'll feel it. It's going to be incredibly uncomfortable for you. Because again, that higher expression of you is like, you're ready to go. You are ambitious energy. You are like ready to, create something, build something that again is going to assist not only you, but the rest of the world potentially, and that will be around for lifetimes. So anyway, you can see how those two energies, the lower expression, will really just trip you up and keep you just running in circles. So lower expressions are not a bad thing. They will assist you, again, in acquiring the tools and the resources and the wisdom that you need to be able to elevate yourself when you fall into those lower expressions, which again, we do that throughout our lifetimes. That's not something that we master, that we find our highest expressions and we just stay there. We came here to experience it all. And so that includes those lower expressions. That includes that being uncomfortable, but to better understand that side of ourselves. Like, oh, okay, this does not feel good. What is going on? And like to take a closer look. And so I think it helps to understand, again, the lower expressions of both energies so that when you start to fall into those energies, you can be like, ooh, yeah, this doesn't feel good. There's something wrong here. What's going on? Is this my Cancerian energy? Is this my 4 energy? Is it both? Where do I need to do some work here? What do I need to do in order to elevate myself back up into those higher expressions so that I feel much better, so that things just seem to work much easier? So I hope that this was helpful. Thank you all so much for listening. Take care. Bye for now. Leo, if you are a sun, moon, or rising sign Leo, as well as a life path number 4 or life path number 22-4, then this reading is for you. We're going to take a look at the higher and the lower expressions of Leo, as well as the higher and the lower expressions of the 4. Now, 22s, if you, I'm going to refer to you as 4s throughout this reading because ultimately that is your life path number. The 22 energy is an extension of that energy. If there's something that you need to know that directly affects the 22, I will let you know. Okay, so Leo. Leo is a fire sign. When Leo is in its highest expression, we see natural leadership. We see this unmatched drive, compassion, these big hearts, very generous energy with their time, their energy, their money, very self-assured, very confident. When Leo is in its lower expression, we can see, the ego take over. We can see stubbornness, arrogance, domination, possessiveness, jealousy, a pompous attitude, and very self-absorbed, okay? Now, when we look at the 4 energy and the 22 energy, now 4 energy is very introverted energy, okay? That doesn't mean that the person needs to be introverted. It's just that the energy is more introverted. 22 energy, however, if you are a 22, you're going to feel that introverted pull of the 4, but your work as a 22 is meant to be extroverted. So just keep that in mind that as a 22, your work, your purpose is meant to be seen and benefited from and shared with the world, right? So you definitely might feel a little bit of push-pull there. Now, 4 energy, when we look at the astrological connection, it is quite literally represented by the earth. So it's definitely an earth energy, obviously, but the earth is what 4 energy is most connected to. And so as a 4, I just want to mention this, you may notice that you feel much more at home in nature, that you have a unique or very special connection with animals, plants, whatever, right? Anything to do with nature. And that has to do with that astrological connection to the earth as a 4. Now, when we look at the positive traits of the 4, we see a very practical energy, very scientific mind, great organization skills, good eye for detail, great memory. 4s like to put down roots. They like to create the roots and then plant those roots, right? Like they like to be grounded. There's a sense of order that comes with being a 4. They like that sense of order. They like that structure, not to the point of confinement, but they like to know that there's a natural sort of order to things. 4s can be very patient. They have just a very calming energy about them for the most part when they're in their highest expression, right? They can be very logical, but they're also very intuitive and psychic, and they run from the heart center. So again, it's just this very beautiful balance between the divine masculine energy of action, logic, and the divine feminine energy of intuitiveness, heart-centeredness, stillness, right? Earth energy. And 4s are usually very emotionally mature. Again, there's a wisdom that comes through the 4 energy. It's almost like sort of like an old soul kind of energy. Now, when you look at the negative traits of the 4, we see shyness, being overly methodical, sort of like that perfectionist energy where you're just spending a million hours on one thing, and so it's taking you forever. I will say with 4 energy, things are meant to move much more slowly. That's where that patience has to come in. Things are meant to be done methodically, and each step sort of integrated, right, and understood so that you can teach others how to do it or whatever. But when you become overly methodical or a perfectionist, you you impede yourself, you trip yourself up, right? It has nothing else to do with divine timing, as opposed to it has to do with you just being overly meticulous. We also see in the lower expressions of the 4 stubbornness, self-doubt, fixed opinions, very rigid in their thought processes, serious in nature, argumentative, materialistic, and the big one, impatience. 4s, I could pretty much guarantee that for most 4s, unless you have like just a tremendous amount of polarizing energy in your numerology chart, I would just suspect that not a whole lot comes easy for you. You have to work for it. You have to put in the effort, put in the energy, show up and do the work. But what does come in for you, the rewards are in direct proportion to that effort that you put forth. And so even though it might take time, again, patience, the reward is worth it, basically, right? And so, yeah, when you're in your lower expression, you have a lot of impatience. You're like, things should have been happening yesterday and they didn't, and now I'm going to give up, and so you have to start all over again. And it just becomes kind of like this cycle. Anyway, so let's take a look at the higher expression of Leo and how it complements the energy of the 4 in its highest expression. So Leo, again, natural leadership, drive, compassion, just that energy of confidence. That really steps in and assists that earth energy, right? That 4 energy. It's like you have the confidence now to continue to move forward. You have the drive, the compassion, that natural leadership where 4 energy, again, is more introverted. You have this Leo fire coming in being like, nope, we're going out and we're doing this. We've got this. We can, if anybody can do this, we can do this, right? And so this is actually really powerful energy if you're a 22 as well, because a lot of times that the 22s need that sort of fire behind them to be able to step out and take those risks and think beyond the box, right? And create those things that haven't been created before, regardless of what people think. So again, it's just this like fire behind you. If you signed up as a Leo, Sun, Moon, Rising, and also a 4, it's like your soul was like, yeah, we're going to need this like extra push. We're going to need this confidence to be able to step outside our zone, to have the fuel that will take us for the long haul so that we can continue to show up even when we don't see the results right away. Because again, instant gratification and 4 energy just don't really go hand in hand. It's just not something that we see. Now, where we can see this kind of trip us up is if we fall into our lower expression of Leo, which can be more about like wanting that, like instant gratification and demanding it, right? Like being very egotistical, stubborn, like arrogant, dominating, like this should be coming in for me. Why isn't it? And you just continue to sort of trip yourself up because that's like a head clash with the 4 energy. When you look at the lower expression of the 4, again, you get argumentative, you get, the fixed opinions, very rigid, very serious, very impatient. And it just becomes like this, again, like this just tornado of aggressive energy. And really that the earth energy of the 4 becomes kindling for the fire energy of the Leo in its lower expression. And they just eat each other up. And so, and just like with the fire energy of the Leo, if you are in your sort of higher expression of Leo, but in your lower expression of the 4, then you're just throwing dirt on that Leo fire, right? And you're putting that flame out. And so again, they work, it's like a clash of the titans in a sense between that earth energy and that fire energy. And it just creates this aggressive environment where obviously you might create things driven by your ego as opposed to your heart center, looking for that instant gratification. And I can guarantee as a 4, that's just going to blow up in your face. You're going to have to turn around, go back, start over, see where, like start from scratch and talk about getting upset about that. Right? It's like you put in all this effort and now you've got to like circle back around and start all over again because you skipped steps. 4s are just not meant to skip steps, right? It just doesn't happen that way for us. And so you can see how the lower expressions of both are just going to create a lot of chaos within your life, right? And just create a lot of uncomfortable experiences. And so there's nothing wrong with those lower expressions. We're meant to experience them. Otherwise we wouldn't have them, right? Like we signed up for those for a reason. And so they're meant to show us something. So if you can figure out which lower expression you're currently in and what it's trying to show you, then you become that much more wise. You acquire that many more tools to assist you in the future when you dip back into those lower expressions, because we always do throughout life. So it's not a bad thing. It's something we are meant to experience, but we're not meant to stay there. We're meant to experience it and find our way above it and beyond it. And when we fall back into it, recognize it, and then again, transmute the energy and move above and beyond it. It's meant to show us something. It's meant to make us more resilient, much stronger, so that, again, we have the tools leading forward to stay in our higher elevation as much as possible. So hopefully this is helpful in kind of showing you how those energies could present if you are a Leo as well as a 4. Powerful energies, though, overall very complementary. I mean, if you're a 4 with Leo energy, you signed up to accomplish some stuff in this lifetime. And, knowing how long that can take for a 4, you kind of need that fiery fuel behind you. So it's beautiful, beautiful energy, especially if you're a 22. So this is great energy. Your soul did good. All right, everyone. I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much. Virgo, if you are a Virgo sun, moon, or rising, and you are also a life path number 4 or a 22-4, then this reading is for you. 22s, I will be referring to you as a 4 throughout this reading because ultimately you are a 4 life path. The 22 energy is an extension of that energy. If there's something that the 22 needs to know specifically, then of course I'll share that. Okay, so let's look at the Virgo energy. I like to look at the higher expressions and the lower expressions of both Virgo and the 4 so that you can get a better understanding of how these energies complement each other and how they could potentially work against each other in those challenges that you could face. So Virgo is, of course, an earth sign. When Virgo is in its highest expression, we see this very humble energy, very practical, industrious, very kind and empathetic, big hearts for Virgos. They're very methodical and quick thinkers, right? And so they're also very hardworking and responsible. And again, those just big hearts. I know a lot of Virgos and they all just have the biggest hearts. It's very beautiful energy. Now, when Virgo falls into its lower expression, we can see this very overly critical energy, not only of others, but of self. They become perfectionists. They can be overly systematic and very rigid in their thinking and their actions. They can also tend to be pessimistic and stubborn and overly meticulous. And so what's interesting is I want you to listen to the higher expression and the lower expressions of the 4, and you're going to see how these two energies will really complement as well as just bring each other down. So 4 energy is more of an introverted energy. And I would say Virgo probably feels a little bit more introverted. I don't know for sure that it is, but it feels a little bit more introverted as an energy. But 4 is definitely an introverted energy. Now, if you're a 22, I will mention that even though you're a 4 and you have that introverted energy within you, you also are meant to be more extroverted in your work and your purpose, because 22 energy is meant to be seen and experienced by the world, or like the greater community or whatever. So you already may feel sort of a push and pull with that wanting to sort of be a little bit more withdrawn, but needing to sort of put yourself out there. Now, 4 energy is also an earth energy. When we look at the astrological connection between the 4 and the astrology, we see that the earth is the connection to the 4. So 4 is represented by the earth. So you as a 4 may feel just very uniquely drawn to the planet, to the earth, to protecting her, to nature, to the animals and all living beings that we share the earth with. You might have a very unique connection to all of that, which is very beautiful. Some of the positive traits of the 4, which are very similar to Virgo, are practicality, right? Being very practical, a scientific mind, good organization skills, a good eye for detail, great memory. If you know any 4s, they probably can tell you, stories from when they were 2 years old. They just have phenomenal memories. They tend to like to put down roots. So if you have a lot of 4 energy, now again, it depends on what's in your numerology chart. But if you have a lot of 4 energies in your numerology chart, you probably are somebody who, put down roots in your hometown and haven't really traveled or moved beyond that in your lifetime. Now, again, if you have like other energies like 5s or whatever in your numerology chart, that's not necessarily the case. But there's just this sense for 4s to really want to put down roots, be stable, be secure, and and contribute to that security, right? They want to feel like they have again, contributed in some way to build that security. 4s have a sense of order about them. They like order. They like structure, not to the point of confinement, but so that things feel like they have a natural order about them, right? They are very patient when they are in their highest expression. So again, typically not quick to anger, can see all sides of things, just very patient with people, with experiences, with themselves. Again, remember, this is in their highest expression. They can be very logical. However, they are also very intuitive and psychic and run from the heart center. So again, you think of that 4th chakra, that is the heart chakra. And so 4s, when they are in balance, they will move from their heart center, from that intuition, that compass, and then use the ego, the logic to, for the logistics to assist them. And so again, very emotionally mature, very wise energy. Now, when we look at the negative traits of the 4, we see withdrawn, very shy, overly methodical. Again, a lot of similarities between 4s and Virgos. Overly methodical, stubborn, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of fixed opinions and very rigid, serious in nature, and impatient. And so again, 4 energy can be, when it's in its shadow, very impatient. And that's sort of the kicker with 4 energy is things are meant to be done very methodically with 4 energy, not overly methodically, but not overly meticulous, but like to the point where it's like you do each step, right? Things are not meant to necessarily happen quickly for 4s. There's not meant to be that sort of instant gratification, because 4s are meant to build something that's going to last the test of time. They're meant to build a legacy. You can't build a legacy overnight, right? And so with that impatience, we sometimes expect to see things just, you snap your fingers, oh, I put in some effort, now where's my tangible? Doesn't really work that way with fours. Fours have to put in the effort, put in the time, and then the rewards that they see are in direct proportion to the effort put forth. And so it's kind of like this longer process of things. If you think about like an animal spirit that would probably represent that, the four, it could probably be like a turtle, right? It's like you're going to get to the destination, you're going to reap the rewards, but it's going to take you some time to get there, right? And so you have to have patience. So when you fall in your lower expression, you can be impatient and it can be very, very challenging. So when we look at the higher expressions of Virgo, again, we see that very practical energy, very similar to four. We see that industrious energy, that methodical and, being a quick thinker and working hard and responsible. If you have Virgo, Sun, Moon, or Rising, and you're also a four, and you're in your higher expression of both, it's really just kind of like compounded energy of like assisting you in really stepping into your four life path. Like it's like your soul was like, we're doing this and we're going to have every situation kind of assist us in stepping into this higher expression of our four energy. Because Virgo is it's almost like a mirror energy to the four in its highest expression. And so it just really assists that four in what it's trying to accomplish, right? And through its practicality, but also in a very empathetic way, right? Like there's a very strong divine feminine energy with Virgo that's also seen in the four. So again, it's a hard worker, but it's also going to like find ways to self-soothe, find ways to rejuvenate and rest when it's in its highest expression, right? And it's going to follow that heart center. Because again, Virgos have such big hearts. And so again, they're very in tune with themselves when they are in their highest expression. So you can see how in the highest expression, these two energies complement each other so beautifully. They could really be the same energy. So again, you're just getting like double and triple doses of this four energy if you're a Virgo, Sun, Moon, or Rising. Now, where it can trip you up is, of course, in those lower expressions. If you are in your lower expression of Virgo and also your lower expression of four, you can just see where things are just going to come to a complete halt for you. Being overly critical of self, of others, being a perfectionist, being overly systematic, being rigid, being stubborn, overly meticulous. I mean, all these things are almost a mere expression of the negative traits of a four. And so again, if you are in those energies, there's no way that you can move forward because you can't build something that's going to last the test of time. You're too busy like criticizing yourself, right? And like holding yourself back and like questioning yourself and having that self-doubt and having those fixed opinions that aren't going to allow you to expand and grow. So really with Virgo energy, if you're in those lower expressions, it's going to feel so uncomfortable because and then plus you're impatient on top of it, you're going to feel like you're not going anywhere. Like things just have become so stagnant for you. And no matter what you do or what you perceive you're doing, right, to assist yourself to get out of it, you're not progressing, you're not going anywhere, you're not building anything, you're not contributing to anything. It just starts to feel very, very stagnant. And in that process, you're also tearing yourself down by being overly critical, by being too rigid, by all those things, by being impatient, and having that self-doubt. So really with Virgo and four, where a lot of the signs sometimes can feel like a push-pull or like kind of like a tornado of energy, this just feels like just being doused in molasses. Like you're just like, kind of like stuck. So it's a very stuck kind of energy when you're in those lower expressions. So what I would say is, because it's not a bad thing to be in those lower expressions, we're meant to do that. That's why we came here, is to experience it all. But those lower expressions, when you're in those and you're facing those challenges associated with them, they're meant to assist you. They're meant to show you something, teach you something. That's where the growth comes. That's where the lessons come in. So pay attention to that. If you are, one thing with fours is we are in a collaboration with the universe. We are in a partnership. Things move by divine timing, not by our timing. And it can be very difficult for fours to be in a situation that they don't have control over, and to continue to contribute towards something where they don't see the immediate sort of effects or gratification from. But you're not meant to. You're meant to have that patience. And so again, if you're in your lower expressions and you're not seeing things happen, You might be like, well, that's how it feels when I'm in my higher expression. And that can be the case, but it feels much more comfortable in your higher expression. It feels like you're actually getting somewhere, even though you're not seeing the tangibles. Like, this is what you're meant to be doing. So you have that resiliency. But when you're in your lower expression, it just feels stuck. It just feels like you're not moving anywhere. You're not contributing to anything. You're not doing anything. You're just critiquing yourself, beating yourself up, and it affects your relationships and your career and all those things. So again, it's not a bad thing, but it is meant to show you something. So the key is to figure out what it's trying to show you. What expression are you currently in that is hindering your progress? Not basing it on the results that you see, but on how you feel. So overall, though, I love Virgo energy with 4 energy. It's so complementary. It's just like a mirror image of it, and it really assists the 4 in stepping into that energy. So I love it. Again, where it gets really dicey is when you fall into those lower expressions. But it's just about being aware of it, figuring it out, and then finding ways to transmute that energy. So hopefully this will give you some awareness to what that looks like so that can assist you in the future, because we always fall in and out of those lower expressions, and that's something you master. But you can be more aware of it and then move out of it more quickly. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for listening. Take care, everyone. Libra, if you are a Libra sun, moon, or rising, and you are also a life path number 4 or life path number 22-4, then this reading is for you. 22s, I will be referring to you as 4s throughout the reading because 4 is your life path number. 22 is an extension of that number. If there's something that you need to know specifically as a 22, then I will let you know. So let's take a look at the higher and lower expressions of both Libra and the 4 so that you can get a better understanding of how these energies complement each other, how they may work against each other, and what challenges you could potentially face. So Libra is, of course, an air energy. When Libra is in its highest expression, we see the diplomat, the peacemaker. They're very fair, they're idealistic, they're very social and friendly, they're intelligent, and they like to find solutions to problems that often happen with ease for them. Like if they see an issue, they can find a solution pretty quickly. They're often very forgiving, very trustworthy, and very tactful in their approach. They can read a room and decipher how to express themselves or share the information so that it lands in a way that people will integrate the information as opposed to becoming defensive. So that's a very beautiful energy to work with. And again, that's in its highest expression. Now, when we look at Libra in its lower expression, we see moodiness, dishonesty, indecisiveness, neediness, being egotistical, self-indulgence, being untrustworthy, detached, unemotional, vain, and selfish, right? So when we look at the 4 energy, we'll see how beautifully that Libran energy complements the 4 energy to assist it, but also how it can, of course, be self-destructive. And so the 4 energy and the 22 energy are, the 4 energy is more introverted in nature, okay? The 22 energy is meant to be extroverted. Now you have the 4 energy that's introverted, and then you have the 22 energy that's meant to be more extroverted in nature, because the work, your purpose is meant to be out within the world, right? It's meant to be assisting the greater community, a greater, the nation, the world, whatever the case may be. So it's a little bit more extroverted in nature. So if you're 22-4, you may already be feeling kind of like that push-pull within yourself. Part of you wants to be more introverted. Part of you feels the push and need to be more extroverted. 4 energy is an earth energy. It is, when we look at the astrological connection, it is quite literally represented by the earth. So for 4s, you may feel this deep connection to the earth, to nature, to the animals. You may have a very unique connection to them that others don't seem to understand or have. And so again, it's just because your energy is so deeply tied to the earth. It's quite literally the same vibration. It's very, very beautiful. When we look at the positive traits of the 4, we see this very practical energy, very grounded energy, scientific mind, good organization, great eye for detail, phenomenal memory. Again, if you're a 4 or you know of a 4, they can probably tell you stories from when they were 2 years old. They probably have just such a phenomenal memory. 4s like to put down roots. So you'll often see 4s sort of working towards some sort of stability, some sort of strong foundation. They like a sense of order about things, right? Doesn't mean that they like to be restricted or constricted. They just like a sense of order about things. They like to know that there's a natural order to their environment, right? When they're in their highest expression, 4s are very patient individuals. They take the time. They're very calming. They bring about a very calming and nurturing energy about them. They're very patient. They don't anger or very easily or become very defensive very easily. They can be very logical in their thinking, but they're also very intuitive and psychic, and they also move from the heart center. When you think about which chakra is the heart chakra, it's the 4th chakra. And so again, they move from that heart center, that very intuitive feminine energy. And they're also very emotionally mature and wise. So again, that's in their higher expression. When we look at the negative traits of the 4, we see this shyness, this overly meticulous energy. So they're very stubborn. They can have a lot of self-doubt. They can be argumentative. They can have very rigid and fixed opinions. They can be impatient. And so when you look at the higher expressions of Libra, the diplomat, the peacemaker, the very idealistic energy, very social and friendly, very intelligent, very forgiving, trustworthy, all of those very relationship-oriented energies, you can see how, like, especially for the 22, this really assists the 4 in building whatever it is that they want to build, because ultimately they are builders. They're building a legacy. They're teaching others how to build a legacy. They are creating something that is going to stand the test of time. And what I love about the Libra energy with that is that it helps them build relationships. It helps them build those long-term relationships that they may need to assist them in their work, right? Or their purpose, whatever the case may be. And so it's just a really beautiful complementary energy between Libra and the 4. And again, you've got like this earth and air energy. So it's it's like the air energy sort of breathes the life into the 4 when it comes to, again, just relationships and how they deal with other people as well as themselves. Again, it really feeds into that more patient energy, that more feminine energy, and finding solutions. That's the thing with the 4. 4s are not going to do something that is going to bring instant gratification. It's very rare, because again, the whole purpose is to build that foundation, build something that's going to last the test of time. And sometimes you have to be very meticulous in that, but you have to also have the right relationships in place so that you can do that. And to give you, again, the support that's needed to be able to do that. So the Libra energy really brings that to the table. It's almost like if you signed up to be Libra as well as a 4, it's like you were almost setting yourself up to work with the public in some way, to really like work with others in some way, to build something monumental, to build something long lasting, because you have that just sort of innate gift of being that diplomat, of being that peacemaker, bringing people together, helping people to see a better world, right? That idealistic nature. And the 4 energy can help to build that better world, right? And because it's quite literally tied with the earth, and it's also meant to build something sustainable. So very complementary energy. I love that energy. It feels so good between Libra and the 4. Now, when we get into the lower expressions, of course, that's when we've got some issues. So lower expression again of Libra is moody, dishonest, indecisive, needy, egotistical, self-indulgent, selfish, that sort of thing. And the 4 can be more withdrawn, more, overly methodical, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of stubbornness, fixed opinions, impatience. So you just see how it's like where the higher expression of Libra is building those relationships, maintaining those relationships. The lower expression is like ripping them apart, right? And the 4, it's like when it's in its lower expression, it's also creating a situation that's more detrimental to its progression forward. And so it's going to, again, halt what you came here to do. You're going to feel unaligned or misaligned, right? And same thing with that lower expression of Libra, where, you are meant to help bring people together. You're actually just adding fuel to the fire, being that air energy of divisiveness, right? And like in where that could bleed into the 4 energy is building those foundations that are just like a quick fix that are going to fall apart in the future, right? And that is not 4 energy. And you're going to have to circle back around and do it again. So it's kind of like it just feeds into each other in a way that's just not good, not progressive, right? And so, and definitely not tolerant and very impatient. And so it's just kind of this energy of like a lot of friction. So the lower expressions, of course, are not bad. We are meant to experience them so that we can learn that about that side of ourselves, that shadow side of ourselves, like what we're capable of, good and bad. And we're just meant to pull the wisdom, pull the resources, pull the tools from that experience, so that when we fall into those lower expressions in the future, they don't derail us. They don't, dictate to us the next step. We're able to see, okay, I've fallen into a lower expression. I need to find a way to work with it, to transmute the energy and move beyond it, because it's not assisting me. It's not helping me. There's something I need to learn from it and experience, but it's not assisting me in stepping into my purpose, stepping into what I came here to do, both as a Libra and a 4. And so hopefully this just helps to assist you to see like, okay, I'm being very moody, or I'm being dishonest, or I'm being very indecisive. I must be in my lower expression of Libra. What do I need to do to move beyond this? What steps can I take? Or, again, you're like very rigid in your thinking or very impatient. I must be in my lower expression of my 4. Or you have a lot of self-doubt, right? I mean, that's pretty natural for humans, right? But if it's just crippling, then you can kind of be like, okay, I must be in my lower expression of my 4. What do I need to do to move out of this? I'm hurting myself instead of helping myself. So what do I need to do to move on out of this and transmute this energy and move into something much of a higher expression? So I hope that this was helpful for you all, and I will see you all again soon. Take care. Bye for now. Scorpio, if you are a Scorpio sun, moon, or rising sign, and you are also a life path number 4 or life path number 22-4, then this reading is for you. 22s, I will be referring to you as 4 throughout this reading because ultimately that is your life path number. If there's something that you need to know for the 22 energy, then I will share that as we move along. So Scorpio, I would like to look at the higher and the lower expressions of Scorpio, as well as the higher and lower expressions of the 4, so that you can kind of see how these energies work together, complement each other, as well as how they can sort of hinder each other and cause issues. So let's start with Scorpio. So Scorpio is, of course, a water element. When Scorpio is in its highest expression, we see this really powerful energy of ambition, determination, bravery, loyalty, honesty, protectiveness, very intuitive psychic energy, very independent thinkers. They aren't as easily influenced by external sources, right? They're able to think for themselves and come up with solutions and actions based on those independent thoughts. They can be very assertive, but not in an egotistical or aggressive way when they're in their higher expression. There can be an emotional depth to Scorpios, even if they don't show it. So oftentimes with Scorpio, there's a lot going on under the surface, but they might have their poker face on and you're not going to have privy to it. They can also be very deeply sensitive and passionate when they're in their highest expression. Now, when Scorpio falls into its lower expression, that's when things get a little bit dark. We see a lot of stubbornness, manipulation, intolerance, jealousy, resentfulness, aggression. They can become very vengeful, possessive, a lack of trust in others, as well as lack of trust within themselves. There's a lack of vulnerability with a Scorpio who's fallen into their shadow. They can be moody and hypersensitive as well. So when we look at the 4 energy, we see that 4 energy is very introverted. I would say Scorpio energy feels more introverted just because of all of that's going on below the layers, but they're also such an ambitious, determined sign that they probably have a good dose of the extrovertedness as well. 4th four energy is very introverted energy. Okay. Now, if you're a 22, however, your energy is meant to be much more extroverted. Now, that can be your work or your purpose can be much more extroverted while you yourself are an introvert, if that's how it turns out. But your work as a 22 is meant to have an impact, be experienced, be seen by the world, by a greater community, right? So that may create a push and pull within you yourself as a 22-4. Okay, so 4 energy is considered earth energy. When we look at the astrological connection for the 4, it is quite literally the earth. So that 4 vibration is the earth vibration, right? And so as a 4, you may feel just this innate connection to nature, to the animals, to plants, to, again, Gaia, right? Like you just feel like this innate connection, and you almost feel soothed by being in nature. There's just like, again, there's just innate connection because it's the same vibration as with the earth. When we look at the positive traits of the 4, we see this very practical energy, a scientific mind, good organization, good eye for detail, great memory. 4s can often recall stories from their past all the way up to when they were like 2 years old. They just have a great memory. 4s like to put down roots. So there's not a lot of necessarily a lot of risk taking, or if there is risk taking, it's going to allow them to build, take risks that are associated with helping them to build a larger foundation, right? Something more stable. They like a sense of order about things. They can be very patient individuals when they're in their highest expression. They can also be very logical, but they're also intuitive and psychic, and they run from the heart center. You think about the heart chakra, it is the 4th chakra. So they're heart-centered individuals with a logical mind. So it's actually this really beautiful balance between divine feminine energies of, again, intuition, psychic energy, stillness, that earth energy, and the masculine energy of like practicality, logic, action, that sort of thing. 4s are usually very emotionally mature. You see a lot of wisdom when it comes to the 4 energy. And it could be that they're just pulling a lot of that wisdom. They could be old souls, or they could be pulling that wisdom quite literally from the earth, right? Who is very much an old soul. When we look at the positive traits of the 4, combined with the positive traits of Scorpio, it's interesting because the Scorpio energy actually pulls the 4 like out of its shell. And creates that drive, that ambition, that determination. Not that the 4 doesn't have that, it does, but it's like the Scorpio energy brings in the element of risk. It brings in the element of doing things outside of your comfort zone, of instability, right? Like a lot of Scorpio energy is very unstable. And so what's interesting is, even though they complement each other, like they like the Scorpio energy complements the 4 in that it pushes the 4 to be sort of more than what it could imagine it could be type thing. You almost get like this push and pull energy. I don't even know if it's like push and pull. It's just this uncomfortable energy, even in the highest expression of Scorpio and 4. Because 4, again, is very practical. It's very grounded. Scorpio is water energy. It's very deep. There's a lot of depth to it. But there's also that level of like risk and like, again, doing things outside of your comfort zone, not, again, this level of instability. So if you're a 4 and you have Scorpio sun, moon, or rising, there's going to be this element of, it really is kind of like a push-pull, because there's going to be a part of you that wants to like lay down roots, be very stable, but then you've got this like Scorpio energy that's like, take the risk, do something outside of your comfort zone, dive into the intensity. It's meant to assist you to really experience all sides of yourself, and really assist the 4 in thinking bigger, right? As it's building this big legacy, and think outside the box and be that independent thinker. See, that's the problem sometimes with 4s. They can be very rigid in their thinking, especially when they're in their lower expressions. And they might miss some of the elements. They might miss some of the pieces that are going to assist them in building something truly, truly sustainable for more of the population than just those who think like them, right? So Scorpio is actually assisting them in that process, that Scorpio energy. So again, if you signed up for Scorpio Sun, Moon, Rising, and also a 4, you're meant to find the balance. You're meant to work with those energies to create something bigger, to create something that more people can get on board with, right? So yeah, but it also can be uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie. It can also be a very uncomfortable energy. And I would also probably assume that if you have Scorpio energy, Sun, Moon, Rising, and you're a 4, you probably also have like 5s within your chart, I would think, within your numerology chart, because 5 is that kind of very Scorpionic energy, very Aquarian energy as well. But anyway, so Scorpio, when you're both in your highest expressions, both sides of yourself are in your highest expression, right? Scorpio and the 4, there's still probably a little bit of like uncomfortableness, and you just have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable if you have those energies. But understand that even though they feel like they're so different in nature, they are actually working together to help push you into your highest expression. So it's actually really beautiful, even though it can be challenging. And I speak from experience because I am a 4 life path with a Scorpio rising and a Scorpio north node. So it's like, there's definitely a lot of push-pull. And I have a lot of 5s in my chart as well. But anyway, so I would definitely think that there's probably some turbulence going on behind the scenes there, but not in a bad way necessarily. It's just you have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. You have to find your balance there. Now, when we look at the lower expression, that's when things can get really challenging for a Scorpio 4. A 4 is going to be, in its negative traits, it's going to be shy, very methodical, sort of overly methodical, right? Very stubborn, have a lot of self-doubt and a lot of rigid thoughts, right? Rigid in its actions and its thoughts. Can be very serious in nature, very materialistic, and very impatient. That's the thing. 4 energy is meant to be patient. You have to be in it for the long haul type thing. And when you're in your lower expression, there's a lot of impatience. Now, when we look at the lower expression of Scorpio, you already kind of have that energy of like taking the risk and like this sort of like faster moving energy sort of. And so when things don't go the way that you want them to go, that can fuel that impatience, right? But the lower expression of Scorpio is, again, being stubborn, manipulative, intolerant, jealous, resentful, aggressive, vengeful, lack of trust, lack of vulnerability, and moody and hypersensitive. So now if you've got all of that going on in your lower expression of your Scorpio, then you couple that with sort of your argumentative, rigid thinking of an impatient energy of your 4 lower expression. You're just like this tornado that's just like steamrolling people, right? You're not building anything. You're just moving through the world with like this very vengeful energy. And what you do create is not sustainable, is not assisting anyone, not even yourself. And it just becomes like this situation where you're constantly having to go back and repeat the steps, go back and repeat the steps, put in the effort, go back and repeat the steps, because the energy that you're putting forth is so, you're sort of just dismantling yourself in a sense, right? When you're in those lower expressions, it's very, very intense energy. And so there's nothing wrong with those lower expressions. I say this in every reading because there's nothing wrong with those lower expressions. If you're a Scorpio and you're in your lower expression, that's okay. You're meant to experience that. There's something for you to learn there. If you're a 4 and you're in your lower expression, that's okay. You're meant to experience that. You're meant to experience that impatience, right? You're meant to experience that reactivity. And then you combine the 2, Scorpio and 4, you were meant to experience that intensity of those lower expressions, to teach you something, to show you that side of yourself, to use that energy and channel it into something much more elevated, and to assist you in getting to your higher expression, right? Your higher octave. So there's nothing wrong with the lower expressions, but it's definitely going to be challenging. It's definitely going to impede your progress, and it's up to you to figure out which expression you're in and how to pull yourself out of it, how to gain the tools, the wisdom, the resources to assist you in moving above and beyond those expressions. And you'll fall back into them repeatedly throughout life. That's life. But you'll know kind of when you're in them, because it'll feel really uncomfortable. It'll just feel chaotic. Lower expression of 4 and lower expression of Scorpio especially just feels very, very chaotic. Like putting in effort, seeing no results, and just having this sense of like anger and beating yourself up about it and aggressiveness about it, right? And more manipulative. Like you're not moving forward in a harmonious way. But again, you're meant to learn something from those experiences. And so, again, if you have Scorpio and you also have 4, even though they're not necessarily, they're sort of like polarizing energies in a sense, but they're meant to, you signed up for that so that you could see a bigger expression of yourself. Like not just like this 4 energy that's very practical and like, it's got its roots in the ground. You're meant to experience life a little bit more unpredictably, right? To show you something bigger about yourself, to experience that sense of imbalance, and finding your balance within the imbalance, right? I don't really know how to articulate it, but it will bring about a higher octave of yourself that you probably never thought was possible. And it'll just be a more holistic energy to work with when you can get to the higher expression and work with those energies and find your balance between the Scorpionic energy and the 4 energy. So I would say that, Scorpio energy with 4 energy is probably one of the more challenging combinations, but you can see how it's like pushing you to be like this larger than life experience for yourself and for people, right? For those that you interact with. And what you build will be so outside of the box that it will assist more people than what you could possibly build if you stay in your comfort zone, if you stay rooted, right? So, powerful, powerful energies. So I hope this helps to at least let you see what you're kind of working with. You'll figure out how to move beyond them or work with them as you continue throughout your journey, but it just helps to sort of understand what it looks like, right? So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for listening. Take care. Sagittarius, if you are a sun, moon, rising Sagittarius, and you are also a life path number 4 or life path number 22-4, then this reading is for you. 22s, I will be referring to you as 4s throughout this reading because ultimately that is your life path number. The 22 energy is an extension of that 4 energy. If there's something that I need to draw the attention to for 22s, then of course I will bring that up for you. Okay, so let's look at the higher and the lower expressions of both the Sagittarius energy and the 4 energy so that you can see how these energies complement each other as well as potentially work against each other and some of the challenges they may bring up for you. Okay, so Sagittarius is a fire sign. When Sagittarius is in its highest expression, we see these freedom-loving, optimistic, honest, intelligent people with good sense of humor, fair-mindedness, spontaneous and fun, very adaptable to change, enthusiastic, and very generous. It's a very playful kind of energy when they're in their higher expression. When Sag falls into its lower expression, we see impatience, bluntness, without a filter, sort of like telling you how it is no matter how undiplomatic, which sometimes can be a good thing, right? You know where people stand, but it's not the best trait when you're trying to build or sell something, right? Or make something work. If you can't read the room and sort of articulate things in a way that it will land on people where they can integrate it as opposed to become defensive, right? And so we see that in sort of the lower expression of Sag. We also see sort of Sagittarians promising more than they can deliver, which sort of creates stress and anxiety for everyone involved, right? Including the actual Sagittarian. There's an inconsistency around it. There's emotionally distant. They can be emotionally distant when they're in their lower expression, and also sort of this like reckless behavior. So if we look at the energy of the 4 and the 22, we see that it is more of an introverted energy. That is for the 4. Now the 22, your work or your purpose is meant to be extroverted. So it's meant to be seen by the world, experienced by the world, or, your greater community. And so you in yourself may feel a little bit of a push-pull just from that aspect. 4 energy is what we would call earth energy, or an earth element, because when we look at the astrological connection between 4 and like a planet, that planet is quite literally the earth. So 4 energy is the vibration of the divine feminine. It is the vibration of the earth. So for 4s, you very well may feel like this very unique connection to the earth, to nature, to the animals, to all that inhabit the earth, to wanting to protect them, to wanting to feel like soothed when you're in nature, whatever the case may be. There's just sort of like this innate connection to the earth. When we look at the positive traits of the 4 energy, we see this very practical nature, very scientific mind, good organization skills, great eye for detail, great memory. You probably have 4s in your life who can tell you stories from when they were 2 years old, right? Just a great memory. They like to put down roots, and they like to have a sense of order about things. Not necessarily to where they're restricted. It's actually a healthy balance of things, but they just like to have a sense of order to things, right? When 4s are in their highest expression, they are very patient individuals. They can take their time. They are not rushed. People can be very vulnerable around them because they don't anger easily. They don't judge really. They're just very patient humans. They are very emotionally mature. Now, 4s can be very logical, but they're also very intuitive by nature and can be very psychic. 4 energy runs from the heart center when it's in its highest expression. So you think of the 4th chakra, that's the heart chakra. So again, 4 energy will move from the heart center, which is divine feminine energy, and then use that logical mind, that scientific mind to for the logistics, right? Use the ego for the logistics. So that's more masculine energy. So it's a very beautiful balance between divine feminine and divine masculine energy when a 4 is within its highest expression. So if we look at the positive traits of the 4 and the positive traits of the Sagittarian energy, we see like this, how the Sag energy being fire energy, right? And 4 being earth energy, they really kind of fuel each other, right? In the highest expression. Sag energy brings in that playfulness, brings in the freedom, loving, like expansiveness, right? The optimism, the honesty, the intelligence, the good sense of humor. Like it just lightens things up a little bit for the 4. So it's kind of like if you're a 4, sometimes, things can feel challenging because you have to do things so like methodically. There has to be order to the process. You see what I'm saying? So it's like with 4s, things don't necessarily, we don't get instant gratification. We have to work towards what we want to achieve, like actually really work for it. But the reward is often in direct proportion to the effort put forth, you see? So it's kind of like, there is this little bit of sort of more like focused, more serious kind of energy around the 4. It is very like cosmic as well, though, because it's got that intuitive side, but there's like this like kind of this seriousness to it, right? This more earthy, practical energy around the 4. So what I love about the Sag energy is, like I said, it brings in that adaptability, that freedom, that just optimism, and that just playfulness, the spontaneity, right? You don't really think of a 4 as being very spontaneous or as being like taking big risks. Sometimes we need to, and that's okay. And usually we have other things in our chart that kind of force us to do that. But if you signed up as a Sag, Sun, Moon, Rising, and also a 4, you have this beautiful combination of like the practicality with the spontaneity. It's just really kind of like a fun energy. And Sag brings in the enthusiasm and like the generosity to that 4. So whatever that 4 is building has like a fun side to it. You know what I mean? It's like, or that 22, whatever that 4 and 22 are building has a more playful side to it. And people can often relate to that a lot more easily or more drawn to that, right? So it just causes the 4 to be a little bit less serious. Not less serious about the work that it's putting forth and what it's building and what it's doing or its purpose. It just kind of like allows that 4 to take itself a little bit less serious. But also while accomplishing whatever it is that it's set out to accomplish, and through the spontaneity of the Sag energy, it allows it to think beyond the box, right? To think bigger, to think more, just expansively and playfully. It's really beautiful energy. That Sag fire lights a fire beneath the 4, but in a real playful way. It's a real fun energy to complement the 4, the seriousness of the 4, the practicality of the 4. So that's really beautiful energy. I love how that complements each other in such a like fun, dynamic way, However, if we look at the lower expressions of both Sag and the 4, we can see how things become a little bit more challenging. So we have the lower expression again of Sag, which is again impatience, bluntness, promising more than they can deliver, which of course creates distrust. Emotionally distant, reckless behavior, getting bored really easily, so very inconsistent in their nature. And then you look at the negative traits of the 4, and we have more withdrawn, overly methodical, stubborn, self-doubt, fixed opinions, so very rigid, very serious, very materialistic, very impatient, and argumentative. And so again, and I'm going to mention that again, impatient. And one of like sort of the core pillars of the 4, what we're meant to really step into in this lifetime is to be able to be patient and to really embody patience. So if you have Sag lower expression, which is all that impatience and recklessness and changing directions really quickly, and then we look at the lower aspects of the 4, and it's also impatience, right? And self-doubt, then we can just see how it's like we just would spiral out of control, right? It would be very difficult to accomplish what we're meant to accomplish if we're in those lower expressions. Not only that, but we also would be like alienating the people that we're meant to be working with to build these solid foundations and to assist, right? And so it's kind of like if we can't deliver on what we said we would deliver on, or we're super flaky, or we, make promises of more than we can actually fulfill, that goes so against the 4 energy that it would feel so incredibly uncomfortable. But if you are Sag, Sun, Moon, or Rising, that's also a very big part of your essence, right? And so you can see how you would have this incredible push-pull energy between Sag and the 4. And even like in its higher expressions, it might feel, even though it's really good for each other, Sagittarius energy is very good for the 4 energy, but it can also feel a little bit like there's 2 sides of you that don't really understand how to work with one another yet, and you're trying to figure it out. That's in your highest expression. And then when you get to the lower expressions of both, it's just like this, just like these 2 tornadoes that kind of merge and have no idea how to work with one another, right? And it's part of you. So it's this push and pull energy of what the 4 is meant to step into, what the lower expression of Sag is pulling you in a different direction from that 4 energy. It just becomes kind of really chaotic and sort of a mess, right? Now, with that being said, the lower expressions are not a bad thing. They are meant to show us and help us to experience that side of ourselves and to teach us something. There's lessons to be learned there. When we're in our lower expression in some shape or form, we're going to face challenges, right? It's when we're in our higher expressions of both Sag and 4 that we're going to see things unfold, things are working for us as opposed to working against us. We're working for ourselves as opposed to against ourselves, right? But those lower expressions, those roadblocks, those challenges are meant to show us something. We're meant to experience that lower side of ourselves so we understand that side of ourselves, so we can experience that in human form and see how that feels, right? Because it's going to feel very, very uncomfortable. And so by understanding what the lower expression is, you can start to see it sort of materialize within your real world experience. Understand, oh, I must be my lower expression of 4 or Sag energy. What do I need to do to get out of this? What do I need to do to move to a higher elevation? And it might not be clear right away, and you might have to experience those challenges, right? The way that those challenges feel for you. Because again, our soul wants to experience things in human form so that we can understand them. So I don't think it would be the easiest energy to work with, but it's going to give you some pretty great challenges to work with, which will give you some great lessons in life. And you can use those resources, those lessons, that wisdom in your building, whatever it is that you choose to build, that legacy that you choose to build, or however you choose to teach others, right? It will help you in that process when you step into your higher elevated energy of Sag in the 4 or the 22. So again, I like the energy that Sag brings to the 4 when it's in its highest expression. It just lets the 4 loosen up a little bit, play a little bit more. And it's through that playfulness that you will find your creativity, you will find your spark, you will figure out what it is you want to build, what it is that, where there needs to be a stronger foundation within your relationships, your life, whatever, your purpose. And do so without like burning yourself out because you're too like hyper focused or you're too serious, right? But yeah, in those lower expressions, it can definitely be challenging. But again, it's some of those, greater challenges just teach us greater things about ourselves, and we walk away from it with greater wisdom. So it's definitely not a bad thing. But with that being said, I can definitely see how it would be a challenging experience, very challenging to have Sag energy with 4 energy. You can definitely make it work. You're meant to make it work. It's not an accident that you came here with those energies. It can actually, when you figure out how to make it work, it can work beautifully together. But just know what you're working with, So anyway, I hope that this was helpful in kind of showing you those higher and lower expressions. So again, you do know what you're working with, and you can figure out ways to work with it and make it work for you, right? Your soul knows what it's doing, and it chose those energies for a very specific reason. And maybe you don't understand what that is just yet, but you'll figure it out as you move along. So, all right, everyone, thank you so much for listening. I hope this was helpful. Take care. Capricorn, if you are a Capricorn sun, moon, or rising sign, and you are also a life path 4 or 22-4, then this reading is for you. 22s, I will be referring to you as 4s throughout the reading because ultimately 4 is your life path number. 22 is an extension of that energy. If there's something that pertains specifically to the 22 energy, then of course I will share that with you as we move through the reading. Okay, so let's take a look at the higher and the lower expressions of Capricorn, as well as the higher and lower expressions of the 4, so that you can see how these energies complement each other or can work against each other in the challenges that you face, okay? So Capricorn energy is, of course, an earth energy. When Capricorn is in its highest expression, we see a very ambitious energy, persistence, very practical in their nature, disciplined, highly sensitive, which is not something people normally think about with Capricorn, but they're a very highly sensitive energy. They can be very responsible, very disciplined, very self-disciplined. They don't really need to be micromanaged, like they've got it, right? Very patient energy. They're very organized, they're very wise, very reliable, very creative, and very loyal. When we look at the lower expression of Capricorn, we get sort of this more cynical energy. They can be very selfish, very unforgiving. They can be a perfectionist, egotistical. They tend to be more loners, overly cautious, pessimistic, and sort of rarely satisfied. Like no matter what they accomplish, it's just not enough. It's not good enough. Which can obviously lead to burnout among other issues. Now, what's interesting is when we look at the 4 energy, you're going to see a lot of similarities. So 4 energy is much more introverted within its nature. That doesn't mean that the person has to be introverted, but the energy is more of an introverted energy. However, with that said, I want to mention 22, your energy is more extroverted. Now you have the 4 energy that's introverted, and then you have the 22 energy that's more extroverted. Your work, your purpose in life is meant to be seen by others, experienced by others, is meant to be out in the world. So you already will probably feel some kind of push and pull internally between that 4 energy and the higher expression of the 22 energy. So just keep that in mind. Now the 4 is also an earth energy, right? And quite literally an earth energy. When we look at the astrological connection between a planet and what represents the 4 energy, it is quite literally the earth. So 4 energy is the same vibration as the earth, right? And so as a 4, you probably feel much more connected to the earth, to nature, to animals. You probably have some kind of unique connection with them. And you probably want to protect the earth. You're probably much more driven to do that than some of the other numbers, some of the other signs. So yeah, so there's this sort of deep connection with the earth. When we look at the positive traits of the 4, and you're going to see a ton of similarities here between Capricorn and the 4. We've got very practical in nature, a very scientific mind, good at organization, good eyes for detail, great memory. They like to put down roots. They like to know that they are stable and secure and that they've contributed towards that security and that stability. They have a great sense of order, or they want a great sense of order, right? Like they want to believe that there's, or know that there's a sort of natural order to things. Not in a constrictive or restrictive way, but just in like a natural, the way the world works type thing. And that there's like a natural order to things. They're very patient. Again, so many similarities between Capricorn and 4. They are emotionally mature. They're very wise. They're very logical, but they're also very intuitive and psychic. And so with 4 energy, you have this very beautiful, when they're in their higher expression, you have this very beautiful balance between the divine feminine energy of intuition, heart-centeredness, stillness, and the divine masculine energy of logical approach, scientific mind, practicality, like action, right? So it's a very beautiful combination of the two and a very beautiful balance when they are in their higher expression. Now, if we look at the 4 lower expression, again, you're going to see a lot of similarities here between the 4 and Capricorn. So 4 energy, we've got shyness. They become very withdrawn, overly methodical, so very meticulous, like to the point of like perfectionism, right? And it slows them down, like just basically halts their progress. They can be very stubborn, very argumentative with fixed opinions, right? Have a lot of self-doubt, be very serious in their approach in their life, very materialistic, very impatient. And so again, if we look at the higher expression of Capricorn, ambitious, persistent, practical, disciplined, highly sensitive, responsible, like all the patient, right? There's pretty much a mirror image to the 4. Very similar. And of course, they're both earth energies. And if I can speak, Capricorn is known to be that determined sign, that ambitious sign, the one that's going to like, you put a Capricorn on it, you know it's going to get done and it's going to get done right? They're going to make sure of that. So it's a very, like, again, ambitious, practical, disciplined energy, but also highly sensitive, right? It's also, when it's in its higher expression, a good balance between the feminine and the masculine energies. So again, when you look at the 2 positive traits of the 4 and the positive traits of the 4 and the Capricorn, you see how they really just like build upon each other, right? It's just like more of the same. And so what that tells you is that if you've got a lot of Capricorn energy and you're a 4 or a 22, you came to accomplish something. You came to build some kind of legacy that is going to like stand the test of time, that is going to be going to assist the collective in some way. It's something bigger than you. And you had to have all of this sort of real ambitious, practical, disciplined energy to do it because it's such a big project, whatever this may be. It's not something that's going to be built overnight. It's not something that's going to happen easily. It's not something that's going to, you're going to see instant gratification for. It's something you're going to have to build over a lifetime, really, I would dare to say. And so you needed that incredibly ambitious, persistent energy of the Capricorn, the disciplined energy of the Capricorn to assist the 4 energy to not give up. Because that's one thing with 4 energy, it's like if you had to equate it probably to some kind of like animal spirit guide, I would say it's probably equivalent to like the turtle. It's a very slow moving energy because it's building something of value that is meant to last for decades to come, right? Or lifetimes. So that doesn't happen quickly. If it happens quickly, then it's not sustainable. It's just not. It doesn't work that way. And so yeah, if you came here with Sun, Moon, Rising, Capricorn, and you're also a 4, then I can almost guarantee that your soul made the decision that it wanted to create something of incredible value that would be very sustainable and last the test of time. And I would say because you're a 4, it would be related in some fashion to the earth, to sustaining the earth in some way, to assisting the earth in some way, and the inhabitants, right? So the greater collective. So looking just at that, I can see that you probably signed up for something pretty big. And you need that persistence, that discipline to be able to see you through and not give up when the going gets tough, because it will. It will get challenging. And especially you have to have that patience. So beautiful, beautiful complementary energy with the higher expressions of both the Capricorn and the 4. They complement each other so well. And again, it's just like compounding the energy of the 4 with the support of the Capricorn. So just beautiful energy. When we look at the lower expressions, though, this is where you can trip yourself up. This is where you can stagnate. That earth energy just gets so heavy. Like it just really, like, you want to talk about setting roots, you're like in the ground. It's very heavy, heavy energy. Now, I will say too, if you are a Capricorn Sun, Moon, or Rising out there and a 4, I so empathize with you and your journey, because I am a Capricorn Sun, which is basically your core energy, and a 4, life path 4. So I get it. I'm right there with you. And so I know, like, when we're in our lower expression, we are stuck. We are in the ground. Now, when we look at, and we can really beat ourselves up about it. So when we look at the lower expressions again of the Capricorn, again, cynical, selfish, unforgiving, perfectionist, egotistical, loner, overly cautious, pessimistic, and rarely satisfied, like nothing is good enough. When we look at the 4, again, withdrawn, overly meticulous, like methodical, right? Stubborn, self-doubt, argumentative, fixed opinions, too serious, impatient. And so again, you can just see how this energy just keeps you chasing your tail. It just keeps you moving in circles in this heavy, muddy, sort of grounded energy, right? It's like when when it's a hot, stuffy day and you're on a hike and there's no air blowing. It's just dead air. That's what the lower expressions of Capricorn combined with the lower expressions of 4 feels like. Just dead air, just nothing happening. And it can be incredibly frustrating, especially for a Capricorn 4, because you want to be building towards something. You are the persistent, the disciplined sign as a Capricorn, and a 4, same thing. You want to be building something. You want to be contributing to something. So when you have to push the pause button, or the pause button has been pushed on you, that can be incredibly challenging, and that can make you incredibly impatient. And so again, you become pessimistic, you become, you have a lot of self-doubt, and you just keep yourself stuck in the same place. And so again, the lower expressions of any sign or any number are not bad. They're meant to show us something, right? It's like, where is that impatience getting you? Nowhere. Where is that being argumentative getting you? Nowhere. Where is like that cynical, unforgiving, perfectionist, egotistical attitude getting you? Nowhere. You know what I mean? It affects your relationships, it affects your career, it affects your purpose, it affects your whole life. But it's meant to show you something about yourself and like what you're capable of, what you're capable of moving beyond, what you're capable, how it feels to be in those lower expressions. And, it feels really bad. It feels uncomfortable. It feels really challenging. So obviously we don't want to stay there. And so it pushes you to find that higher octave of yourself and to find a way to step into it. And so through that, you have that soul growth. You have that figuring out who you are, what you came here for, what you're capable of. And it sort of diminishes that self-doubt. It diminishes that ego. It puts the ego back in its place, right? You don't want to kill the ego, right? We came here with an ego for a reason. We want to work with it. We want to put it to work. We want to give it a job. We want it to work for us, not work against us. So, there's nothing bad about the lower expressions. They're meant to show us something. But being aware of them and how we feel when we're in them assists us in elevating higher. And then when we fall back in the lower expressions, which that's part of life, it's going to happen, all throughout our journey. We just get the wisdom and the tools and the resources to be able to assist us in elevating ourselves and transmuting that energy so we don't stay there for very long, right? We're not chasing our tail for years and years and years. We figure out a way to move beyond it to get to work for what we came here to accomplish. So again, in the highest expressions of both Cap and 4, I love it. I think it's really, really, it's really powerful energy to see that, your soul came here for a very specific purpose in building something that is going to assist others to, that may change systems, that may change viewpoints, ideas, whatever. It may change institutions, may change the way we do things on a global scale. Who knows? You came here with that discipline to the nth degree to be able to do that, to build whatever it is that you're working on building. Now, if you're also a 22, you can just it's even magnified even more. So very powerful. That just tells me if you've got Cap energy and 4 energy, you came here to build something worth a lot of value to people and to yourself. And that's not going to be an easy task. It probably will take, a lot of your lifetime to be able to do that. But you have everything you need to be able to do it because you set yourself up for that. It's just be aware of those lower expressions and how they make you feel and how to work yourself out of them should you find yourself in them. Okay? So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for listening. Take care. Aquarius. If you are an Aquarius sun, moon, or rising, and you're also a life path number 4 or life path number 22-4, then this reading is for you. 22s, I will be referring to you as 4 throughout this reading because ultimately that is your life path number. 22 is an extension of that energy. If there's something that I need to refer to directly to the 22s in accordance with that energy, then of course I will let you know. So let's take a look at the higher and the lower expressions of Aquarius, as well as the higher and the lower expressions of the 4, so that you can see how these energies complement each other and at times work against each other. All right, so Aquarius is a air sign. When Aquarius is in its highest expression, we see this individual who's very adaptable to change, right? Like change, they're used to change. It happens all the time. And so they become very adaptable to it like chameleons. They can be very esoteric. They can be very smart and creative, very friendly, independent, free-spirited, and unconventional individuals. They can be very honest, devoted, very positive in their outlook, and very optimistic. They're also very passionate about what they set their mind to, right? Like what piques their interest. They can be very reliable, very mysterious, and they are the freedom seekers of the sign, right? Of the zodiac. They do not want to be fenced in. They want to be free, right? They're very unconventional in their thinking and their actions. When we look at the lower expression of Aquarius, we see sort of this energy of like a sort of like having a short attention span, lack of focus, lack of empathy, unpredictability, being very stubborn, being an extremist, being aloof, pessimistic, overly rebellious, and impatient. Now, when we look at the 4 energy, First of all, 4 energy, where I would say Aquarian energy is probably more extroverted, it just feels more extroverted to me. 4 energy is definitely introverted. It's a more introverted energy. Now, if you're a 22, keep in mind your energy is more extroverted. You may feel obviously the push and the pull between the 4 energy, which is introverted, but also that 22 energy that's extroverted, because 22s, their work is meant to be seen, experienced by a greater audience, right? Like the public. So it needs to be more extroverted. So 22s, you may already feel sort of like a push-pull energy within yourself between your 4 life path and your 22 master energy. So 4 is an earth element, right? So when we look at the astrological connection in astrology, 4 is represented by quite literally the earth, right? So you may, as a 4, feel a innate pull to Gaia, to the planet, to earth. You may have a very unique connection to the earth, to nature, to animals. And that goes back to that astrological connection. 4 is quite literally the vibration of the earth. When we look at the positive traits of the 4, we see this very practical nature. We see a scientific mind, good at organization, great eye for detail, great memory. 4s like to put down roots. They like to feel stable and secure, and they like to feel like they have contributed towards that stability and that security. They like a sense of order about things. They, not to be restricted or constricted, but they like to think that there's a natural order to things, and they like to sort of follow that natural order. They, when they're in their higher expression, are very patient. They're very patient individuals. They move a little bit slower. It's a little bit of a slower moving energy in the sense that they are the observers. They take things in. It allows them to move through that patience, right? Like to see things for what they are and to know what they're working with. They're not really quick to anger or be reactive when they're in their higher expression. They're emotionally mature. They are very wise. It's a very wise energy. 4s can be very logical in their thinking, which is a very divine masculine energy, but they are also very intuitive and psychic, and they move from the heart center. So again, you think about that 4th chakra is the heart chakra, right? And so 4 energy is very much balanced between divine feminine energy of that more intuitive heart-centered nature and the more logical masculine energy or practical energy that's more divine masculine. So it's a healthy balance between the two when they're in their higher expression. Now, when we look at the lower expression or the negative traits of a 4, we see shyness, overly methodical, stubborn, self-doubt, argumentative, fixed opinions, confused thinking, sort of too serious, materialistic, and impatient. Now, let's take a look at both the positive and the positive of 4 and the positive of Aquarius, and you can kind of see how they help each other in a way. So Aquarius again is very adaptable. That assists the 4 because 4s sometimes can fall into their lower expression and be too serious or be too methodical, right? And so, in life, there's going to be challenges. There's going to be changes. We don't have control over our external circumstances. And 4s are meant to be moving sort of slowly as they build something of magnitude, right? Something large in scale that will assist humanity potentially, right? Or assist their greater community, that is going to stand the test of time, right? And there's no way that you can do that without there being things thrown at you that you have to be able to adapt to. So you as an Aquarius, Sun, Moon, Rising, have that built in where you can be adaptable to that change, right? And I would suggest that if you have Aquarius, Sun, Moon, Rising, and you're also a life path 4, you probably have a lot of 5s throughout your chart, your numerology report, to help you to be more adaptable and because you're going to face a lot of challenges, a lot of changes, that sort of thing. And so you need to start becoming adaptable to that. And so your life experiences will assist you in that, right? Through your challenges. But we see like sort of that like unconventional thinking, which assists the 4 because it also lets you think outside the box. 4s can sometimes be a little bit too logical, too practical. And so they have to kind of like broaden their scope a little bit so that whatever they're building, whatever they're teaching, whatever they're creating isn't too confined, too rigid, right? Like isn't something that's going to keep people in their comfort zone and stuck. It's going to assist them in being more expansive. And so Aquarius sort of steps in with that sort of air energy to free things up a little bit, to assist the 4 in not being so rigid in its thinking, right? And also the Aquarius energy is so free-spirited, but yet so devoted that it's like it likes its freedom, but it's also devoted in its energy. And so with that freedom energy, again, that opens up the energy of the 4, where it doesn't become so sort of grounded that it doesn't move. There's no movement. When the Aquarian energy comes in, it assists in the movement, right? It sparks the passion. It's reliable, it's devoted, it's honest, but it's also very expansive. Like, again, just freedom energy, openness, allowing the 4 to be more of the observer, to understand what it is it's trying to build, to think outside the box. And also, there's such a positive, optimistic energy around Aquarius that also assists the 4 to not fall into pessimism, right? To be open, to not take things so seriously that they get down on themselves, that they start working against themselves, right? So if you signed up for Aquarius Sun, Moon, or Rising, that energy, that expansive energy, that sort of unconventional energy is really assisting you in opening that 4 energy within yourself up even more, right? It can be uncomfortable. It's definitely like a push-pull energy. I have a 4 life path and I'm an Aquarius moon. And I also have a lot of 5s in my chart, but I definitely feel that push-pull because it's like you want that stability, you want to lay down roots, but then you have that Aquarian energy that's like, no, we want to be free, we want to like explore, we want to travel, we want to like, we don't want to buy a house, we want to like travel the world. So it's kind of like these two polarities coming together. And what you have to do as a 4 with Aquarius Sun, Moon, Rising is you need to find your balance between the two because they are meant to assist each other. Otherwise, your soul wouldn't have signed up for them. You know what I'm saying? So it's like they're meant to work together. And it's almost like whatever it is that you're building or trying to teach or, experiencing is meant to have the freedom, the openness, the expansiveness of the Aquarian energy and that sort of free-spirited, unconventional energy to assist and sort of blow open the energy of the 4 to make it even that much more holistic, I guess, right? So they definitely work together. But I'm not saying it's an easy energy to work together with, right? Like you just have to find your balance. You have to see like, how can you honor that 4 energy within you and also the Aquarian energy within you and find that happy medium? Because where that sweet spot is, where that medium is where you're meant to sort of hover. That's where you're meant to be because whatever it is that you're building, whatever it is that you're creating is meant to be from that space, from that sort of median space, right? You need those qualities of the Aquarius energy. You need those qualities of the 4 to be able to do whatever it is your soul came here to do. So it's complementary, but it's a little bit more challenging energy to work with just because, like I said, it's sort of, there's a lot of polarities in Aquarius energy and 4 energy. So, you just got to find your sweet spot. You got to find what works for you. Now, when we look at the lower expressions of both, then it's just like a shitstorm. It's just kind of a mess. But it's like, you just got to figure out how to work with it, how to move above it. And there's nothing bad with the lower expressions. We're meant to experience them for a reason. That's where our challenges lie. That's where our lessons lie. That's where everything, where we learn the most about ourselves. That's where that all lies. So we have to go through it. And we'll continue to go through it throughout our lifetime. But there's a lot of wisdom to pull from those experiences. So when we look at the lower expression of Aquarius, again, short attention span, lack of focus, lack of empathy, unpredictable, stubborn, extremist, aloof, pessimistic. That really breaks down the energy of the 4, right? It goes so against the energy of the 4 and what you're meant to step into. And if you couple that with the negative traits of the 4, just that self-doubt, the argumentative, fixed opinions, impatient, you end up just sort of being this tornado of energy, accomplishing nothing, right? It just it's so chaotic. The energy feels so chaotic, which is so against what a 4 sort of stands for, right? And it even works against, obviously, the energy of the Aquarian. So it's kind of within you, right? So it just creates a tornado. And you can see how it's with that shortest attention span of the Aquarius energy and the sort of impatience of the 4 energy. We just get this you're kind of going all over the place. You start to create something, it doesn't work, and so then you're on to the next thing, or and you just repeat. Whereas with 4 energy, things are not meant to happen quickly. They are meant to happen methodically. You're meant to be building a foundation that's meant to last this test of time. You can't do that if you have a short attention span and you're impatient, right? There is no sort of instant gratification when it comes to 4 energy. It's very much we will dismantle this and then we will build it the way that it's meant to be built so that it will last the test of time and so that it will actually be beneficial to people and to ourselves or whatever. And so you can just see how it's the Aquarian energy at its lower expression and the 4 energy at its lower expression just keeps working against each other. It just keeps tripping each other up. And so again, you just kind of become this dog that's chasing its tail, angry and frustrated. Things aren't moving faster, but you're just going in a circle. And so you can see how it could become incredibly frustrating. But again, there's something there for you to learn. There's something there for you to pick up. So that's the whole point of the lower expression, is so that we can see that side of ourselves, figure out that, hey, I don't like the way this feels. You know what I mean? I like when I'm in my higher expression, I like how that feels. I like how things work then, even though it moves slower than I would like to see, right? And I feel Aquarius energy is a faster moving energy. Then you have the more slower moving energy of the 4. So again, it just, even in your higher expression, it still feels like an imbalance. But you can make those energies work for one another in a very big and positive way. Whereas with the negative traits, you're just meant to learn something there. You're meant to pull some wisdom from that you can use in your future. But yeah, if you're in your lower expressions of your Aquarian energy and your 4 energy, you're just going in a circle. You're just chasing your tail and getting really frustrated about it. And so yeah. So I hope this was helpful in kind of showing you what those expressions were or are. And, it'll be up to you to figure out how to best work with them, find your center, find what works for you, find what feels uncomfortable, what feels good, and then, find your ways to sort of stay there or to find your way back to that place that feels better. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for listening. Take care. Pisces, if you are a Pisces sun, moon, or rising, and you're also a life path number 4 or a 22-4, then this reading is for you. 22s, I will be referring to you as 4 throughout the reading because that is your life path number. The 22 energy is an extension of that number or that energy. If there's something that you need to know that's specific to the 22 energy, then I will let you know as we move through the reading. So let's look at the higher expressions and the lower expressions of both Pisces and the number 4 so that you can see how these energies complement each other, work together, or work against each other, which would create your challenges. So Pisces is a water sign. In its highest expression, we see a highly adaptable visionary who's kind and gentle, is highly intuitive, possibly psychic, very creative, empathetic, very generous, emotionally mature, laid back, and very agreeable. In Pisces' lower expression, we see someone who is overly emotional, hypersensitive, overly trusting, and sort of easily swayed or influenced by external forces. They're closed off emotionally, potentially. They can be naive. They can be in that victim mentality, and they can be incredibly moody. So when we look at the energies of the 4, we can start to see how or why your soul might have chosen to come here as a Pisces sun, moon, rising, as well as a 4. So 4 energy is more introverted energy. I would say Pisces is probably a little bit more introverted as well, energetically. 4 energy is definitely introverted. Now, if you're 22, you're going to have that introverted energy of the 4, but then you're going to have the extroverted energy of the 22, because your work, your purpose, is meant to be displayed externally, right? Like to the public. The public is meant to benefit from your work, from whatever it is that you build. You are the master builder. And so you may also feel that pull, like push-pull energy of the introverted 4 with your extroverted 22. So just keep that in mind. You just have to find your balance. The 4 energy is an earth element. And so when we look at the astrological connection, we see that the connection that the 4 has is quite literally the earth. That is the vibration, right? So it's like the 4 is the vibration or the closest vibration to the earth. So if you're a 4, you probably feel sort of innately connected to the earth, to the animals. You probably have a very unique connection to nature, to the animals, to those that we inhabit the planet with. You probably feel very tuned into the earth and its consciousness, right? And so when we look at the positive traits of the 4, we see this very practical energy. They can have a very scientific mind, be good at organization, have good eyes for detail, great memory. The 4s that you know in your life probably could tell you stories from when they were 2 years old. They have a great memory. They like to put down roots, and they like a sense of order about things, not necessarily feeling restricted or constricted, but they like to know that things are happening in the natural order of things, right? Which is very earth-oriented. They are very patient individuals. When they are in their highest expression, the 4 is very patient. They're very patient and nurturing and loving, and they're not quick to anger. They're not reactive. They're just very patient. They understand that things take time to accomplish, to see through, right? And so they are here for the long haul. They can be very emotionally mature and very wise. There's a sense of wisdom that comes with that 4 energy. They can be very logical in their thought processes, but they're also very intuitive and psychic, which is interesting. And they are very heart-centered. So you have this very beautiful balance of the divine feminine energy with the more masculine energy of, logical, ego, practicality. So the heart-centeredness comes from that heart chakra. So if you think about the heart chakra, it's the 4th chakra, right? Some of the negative traits of the 4 are being more withdrawn, being overly meticulous or methodical, being stubborn, having a lot of self-doubt, being argumentative, having fixed opinions, to being too serious, being very materialistic, and being impatient. And so for a 4, impatience is the Achilles heel. It's the thing that will just completely derail a 4. So just keep that in mind. We are meant to be patient. I myself am also a life path 4. We're meant to be patient. Things that we are meant to do will take time to accomplish. We're meant to build a legacy, build something that will stand the test of time. Those things don't come quickly. If they come quickly, then they're not stable enough. They're not going to last the test of time, right? It just doesn't work that way. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so how did the Pisces energy, sun, moon, rising, work with the 4 energy? How do they complement each other? Well, we can see in the higher expression of Pisces that adaptability, that being a visionary, right? Those complement the 4 energy because 4s and 22s are meant to build something in this lifetime that will last the test of time. They are meant to be looking at the foundations. Where are the cracks? Where can I build? How can I fix these cracks so that it won't happen again? So that they can be more expansive, more adaptable, right? So Pisces comes in with that energy to assist you with your 4 energy in being adaptable, being a visionary, seeing things beyond the scope of your little plot of land that you've sort of laid your roots into, right? Because again, 4 can be very practical. It can be very much like looking for the stability and they can become overly stable, right? And so it's kind of like the Pisces energy is like, we need to think bigger. We need to think outside the comfort zone. We need to be the visionaries. We need to be idyllic in our thoughts so that we can create a world that is more sustainable, right? And the Pisces energy helps the four to do that. Also, Pisces is very highly intuitive. It's really considered to be like the psychic of the zodiac, right? Like the very intuitive. We're all intuitive and we're all psychic. But Pisces energy is very sensitive to that, and they're very tuned into it. So if you have that Pisces energy, you are very much tapped into the intuitive psychic energy of the four that you already have, right? So it's just like compounding that sensitivity to it. So it would not surprise me if like you are, you're a reader, or you're like, you work in numerology or astrology or something like that, or you're literally a psychic or a medium. If you have Pisces and four energy, I could definitely see that. Pisces are also very emotionally mature when they're in their higher expression. So that complements that emotional maturity of the four. Again, it's like your soul was like, I need to have this emotional maturity. I need to have this depth, this intuitive sensitivity to accomplish what I want to accomplish as a four. So I'm going to come down as a Pisces sun, moon, rising in a four. And so you can just kind of see they work really, really well together. That emotional maturity, that sort of laid back and agreeable energy, that assists the four when it's trying to build whatever it's trying to build, when it's trying to see another person's perspective or have that empathy. That Pisces energy just makes it so that person who has that four energy can be much more open to the ideas, the perspectives, the experiences of other people, and that will assist that four in creating whatever it is that they're meant to create in this lifetime, right? In working with other people. So it's very complementary energy to have Pisces and the four in the higher expression. Now, when we get into the lower expression, we can see how this can be very challenging, which they all are, right? All of the lower expressions of all the signs and numbers are challenging, but there's nothing wrong with them. We are meant to experience them, to learn whatever lessons we are meant to learn, to have whatever growth we're meant to have. They're meant to assist us. We're meant to experience and feel how it feels to be in those lower expressions and how it feels to be in the higher expression. So again, lower expression of Pisces, we've got that overly emotional energy and hypersensitivity, right? And so we look at the four, we've got like the lower energy is like impatient, self-doubt, argumentative, sort of withdrawn. And so again, you just got like this, you get this overly emotional energy with this argumentative, fixed opinion energy. And it becomes this energy that nobody wants to work with, right? That's just like really challenging to be around. So it can affect relationships. It can affect what it is that you're trying to build, right? Pisces energy in its lower expression can fall into victim mentality, and it can be very moody. And so again, four energy in its lower expression can be very withdrawn, can be argumentative, can have a lot of self-doubt, and can kind of fall into like confused thinking. So if you're easily influenced by the external, being in your lower expression of Pisces, and you're also like have like sort of like this confused thinking of the lower expression of the four and be more withdrawn, you can be easily influenced by the external, and you step outside of your power, right? You give that power away very easily. And so then you are just sort of become a puppet to whatever it is that outside influence is. So it's important to recognize when your emotions have gained control over you, Pisces, right? Lower expression of Pisces. And when you're becoming withdrawn and start having all that self-doubt and stop putting yourself out there. Because again, especially if you're a 22, you are meant to be out there. Now again, 4 is more introverted energy, but if 4 becomes too withdrawn, then they are not going to be putting themselves out there. They're not going to be building those relationships, building those foundations, building those whatever they're building. Same thing with 22s. That can be crippling for 22s. If you are a Pisces and a 22 and you're in your lower expression and you're like just that self-doubt for a 22 can be crippling. And so if you have that in the lower expression of the 4 or 22, and you're overly emotional, hypersensitive, overly, swayed or influenced or closed off or whatever the case may be, you are going to like really struggle to put yourself out there. You're going to really struggle to follow through on whatever it is that comes up for you to follow through on. And that can be crippling. That can really deter you from stepping into that 22 energy. Same thing with a 4. If you're here as a 4, you came here to build some kind of a legacy, whether it's for yourself, for your family, for the world. 22 is pretty much guaranteed to be out there. That's what it's, you are meant to express and be experienced by the world, or at least a greater community, right? So 100% that's going to be an issue for a 22. For a 4, you pretty much also came here to be a teacher, to build some kind of a legacy, whether that's for your family or for a greater community. But with that comes, like the relationships and knowing what it is that you're trying to build and all those things, and having that self-confidence and really trusting yourself. And if you're in your lower expression of Pisces and your lower expression of your 4, you're just going to become like that hermit who is so withdrawn and overly emotional and cynical. You're just going to not put yourself out there. And that's going to feel incredibly uncomfortable. Because again, 4 energy is meant to be that builder, is meant to be doing something, right? That's going to benefit ideally the earth, because you're so connected to the earth. And if you're withdrawn and cynical and argumentative and all that stuff, you're just tearing down what it is you're meant to be building up. So you can see how they really sort of debilitate each other, the Pisces lower expression and the 4 lower expression. So that can be incredibly challenging to work with, that energy. It's not impossible though. Like I said, your soul chose to come here as a Pisces sun, moon, or rising and a 4. And so there's something that you're meant to do with that energy that you had to have the Pisces influence to be able to accomplish whatever it is as the 4. And again, with it being so highly intuitive and psychic, I would think it's probably going to be finding your balance between the mystical side of things and the more practical side of things, and creating something in that sort of sphere, that medium energy, right? The middle ground that is going to again, stand the test of time, change belief systems, change thought processes of the collective, of the earth, that will assist the earth, right? So it's bigger than what you probably have imagined it to be. But those lower expressions are going to teach you things you need to know, so that as you move into those higher expressions and you move into that work, you're capable of handling whatever surfaces, right? Because if you're out in the public eye and you're creating something that hasn't been seen before, or doing something that hasn't been seen before, or that people don't necessarily agree with, and you're in your lower expression of Pisces and you're overly emotional or highly sensitive, you don't have the bandwidth to be able to handle what's coming at you. And you need that. And so that's why you have to go through the lower expression to gain those tools to assist you when you move up into the higher expression to do the work, right? So you can see how they all kind of play together. But hopefully this helps you to understand like why those exist, why you might be experiencing them, what they look like, so that you can be aware of them and then focus on, okay, I'm in my lower expression of my 4 or my Pisces. What am I meant to learn? What is this experience trying to show me? What can I gain from this? And then you equip yourself with those tools so that in the future, if you fall into that lower expression, guess what? You can move out of it much more quickly and comfortably than you could before. We're always going to move in and out of lower expressions. It's just going to happen. It's part of life. It's part of who we are. But we learn to work with that energy much more efficiently and effectively. So I hope this has been helpful for you, Pisces and 4s and 22s. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you. Take care. Bye for now.